Preparing to live, okay, here we go. And then once I do this, I can close this whole thing, right, Cal?
Yep, once you know it's connected, it will be connected, but you'll want to close it so you don't get
The
feedback.
feedback. Okay, got it. All right, I'm closing it. And then once I do this, I can close this whole thing, right, Cal? Okay. Are we good? Alrighty.
You got 1 minute. You do have a quorum, so other than it not being 7:30 yet, you're good to go.
Okay. All right. Frank Weber is he not on?
Frank, Sal, and Matt are not on.
Frank is raising his hand in the chat. Hold on. I'm just gonna let him talk, okay?
We can bring him into a panelist.
Looks like he's
I
coming
think
in.
he came in. Yeah.
Remote. Oh, is he in? Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, good.
He was.
There he is. I see him.
All
Okay.
right, now, were there two separate passwords to get in this meeting, one for the board and one for the public?
Yes, you should have gotten, did you get the,
No, the only one I have took me into the public portion.
okay, all right. Sorry about that, Frank. I sent it to everyone. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
All right, you're in now. What about Matt?
I did send it to him a little bit ago, so he should be getting on.
Okay. So we do have a quorum, right, Chris?
Yes.
And so it is 7:30. So I think we're gonna start. And Frank is here. We're just missing Sal G and Matt. All right. So. Okay. We will call the meeting to order. And so I read a statement of adequate notice.
Yes.
Yes.
Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the board office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the township clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. The board will take formal action on payment of bills and other agenda items. Mr. Mara?
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of this board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Okay, roll call, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Burns,
Present.
Ms. Callie,
Present.
Mr. DePrima,
Yeah.
Mr. Dunn,
Here.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Here,
Mr. Giordano,
Here.
Mr. Solikowski,
Here.
Mr. Weber,
Here.
Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Quorum exists.
Okay, we are going to do the pledge, so let me see if I can share that. Hold on. Oh, wait. Here we go. I'm sorry, you got to give me a little handicap here. There we go. If we can all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Let me put that, I'm going to put that other one back up. Well, actually, we're going to start sharing the agenda. Hold on one second. Here it is. Okay. Can everyone see that screen?
No, we're not able to see it.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Oh, this because I have to share it. Ha, sorry. Here we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, we're good.
Very good. Little learning curve here. Okay. Okay, so we will have an acknowledgement, a moment of silence. Okay, Code of Ethics. Do I have a volunteer to read the Code of Ethics?
I'll do it.
Jill? Okay, Miss Callie? Yeah, all right. We have our district goals and the approval of minutes. And we'll have a report of our student representative next week. Do we have any recognition that we know of next week? No? Okay. All right, and then we'll have the superintendent's report. Mr. Cittadino, you'll have a report next week, or where'd he go? Do you see him?
Did we lose Dave?
Did we
There he
lose
is.
Dave?
Okay.
No, I do apologize. I was
Oh, there he is.
multitasking.
You were ignoring me.
No, not at all. Well, traditionally, we do have a superintendent's report for next week. If at this time of the luxury of the board, I would go over the, well, not part of the agenda, I will go over the reentry plan that was shared with the public, if that is something the board would like to review. So if we can get someone to share it, that would be great.
See it?
Can see it, yeah.
All righty, just tell me what page you would like to start on.
Is it possible? Okay, I guess we go from there. Let's see.
Go ahead, no, you tell me.
Is it possible to do it from presentation view?
I could try.
Go to presentation view.
How do I get
So
there?
Mrs. DeCaro, if you
Yes.
go right on the top, if you click slideshow,
Oh, yes, sure.
and now
From
on
beginning?
the side, you'll say from beginning
Uh-huh,
and just,
There we go.
okay.
There you go.
And now.
This makes it
just
easier
each-
for everyone to read, I
right,
think.
And just each click will advance it.
okay.
And
I don't see a
backspace, will-
button to click, but,
just it's space bar.
oh, okay, sure, okay. So tell me when to space, I'm
Go
assuming.
ahead. There you
Go
go.
ahead.
So the plan that we shared reviewed 4 major components. The community and state data update, our impact on staffing update, review of the survey results, and the reopening plan. All right, so this information tracks specific dates from when school started, in September 5th through January 5th when this report was created, and kind of just tracking the numbers of new cases per day in the state of New Jersey. So we'd see on January 5th, there's 6,721, just a little over 6,000 on December 5th. So we're a lot of across the state, we're trending in an upward direction. So if you go to the next slide, and we see the hospitalizations, 3,702. The reason why this slide is here, it doesn't really have a lot to do with the schools, but when I ask representatives from the county office in which I deal with, a lot of times, parents have questions about, well, does that count false positives? Does it count people who have already tested positive and testing again? And the state always directs you to this statistic, because even if false positives were increasing, even if double tests were increasing, the county does any rapid test, they make sure it has a PCR before they report it. So it has to still go out, even though you may get a doctor's office report of a rapid result within 15 minutes, it still goes out to the state. It still goes out to the lab for a verification of through the PCR process that it's here. But the county directs me to this information because if the number of hospitalizations are increasing due to COVID, then it's a significant increase, that indicator that the number of cases are real and increasing. Because even if there was a lot of false positives, even if there was double people, the hospitalizations due to COVID wouldn't increase. They would stay the same if there was a lot of false data in the number of positive cases. So go to the next slide. The COVID deaths, as you can see, September, October, November, kind of steady in the numbers that we had. And then across the state, there was a significant spike starting with December through January, which we know is beginning the respiratory illness season that carries us into the middle of February. So this is an indicator of how the respiratory illness season ties into COVID, which ties into people who have pre-existing conditions or other complications that may lead to COVID deaths. So this is an indicator of the same time and space of the daily COVID case, new COVID cases in Old Bridge. Now, these are snapshots of those days, and some days are higher. Our high water mark for the township is 88, was just I believe in the past week. Prior to that, it was 81, which was in December. But we're averaging around anywhere between 45 to 55 new cases per day. This is the total number of COVID cases in Old Bridge. You can see that since November that we've had a significant increase. In fact, our number today is 4,240. So we can see how much has increased just since January 5th. So just since December 5th, we've doubled our number of new COVID cases in the township of Old Bridge. And again, looking at how it impacts those who are more severely impacted. Obviously, the data that I'm reporting is the same data that I get from the county dashboard. I don't have any more data than they have. Anybody has a free access to see the same information that I have, which comes from the Middlesex County dashboard. However, since again, I reported this on January 5th, the Old Bridge number is now 115. 115 deaths related to COVID from Old Bridge Township. So we can see there's been, even since this report was generated, a significant number. Again, those facts, that data can be picked up on the county dashboard. So this is another interesting piece of data. And, everyone has, this comes from the Department of Health and in cooperation with the Department of Education. So this is the COVID statewide activity levels on a timeline. It's hard to see, and I encourage everyone to go to the website and take a look at it. And those are dates in there. You can see that since we went back to all remote at the end of November, the state has gone to orange, which is a high indicator. Now, which is confusing to me, and it may be something that either the governor's office is working towards, or in April, if you see back to when it was red, our numbers were lower across the board. The numbers are higher now, and we're still in orange. And if we go to the next slide, it tells you what the Department of Health guidance is during that time. So if you go back to the orange, the high risk area, and this is what we discussed last week, and we discussed with our attorney, that the Department of Health guidance is that you consider implementing fully remote learning. Now, even though our numbers are greater than they were when we were in the red in April, we are still at the orange orange level, the high risk, which is telling us that we should be implementing fully remote learning. Now, I'm just going to keep sticking with this, and then I'll have Dr. Hoker talk about some other staffing issues. But this is something that report that we started generating, again, to give the public an idea of what is going on in the school. So you have a lot of information that I just presented to you that anybody can get from the county dashboard. Old Bridge Township also has the local data on their website. However, I'm sure, again, a lot of people doing a lot of things. It hasn't been updated since January, so I'm sure there's a lot of new information that has to get in there. Ours is up to date up until I believe yesterday, the 11th. But this information tells us where our students are at and where our staff is at related to positive COVID. Now, I know that other towns will give you presumed positives, and those will be considered in our case pending that's there. So we'd have, these are just positives, not presumed positives. Positive results are in the staff positive range, and the student positives are in the student positive range. Anyone else is in the cases pending as a presumed positive. Now, interestingly, on the 19th was the indicator day before we went back to full remote. And the reason for that, we had 14 staffs positive with 74 staff in quarantine. We also had 22 students positive, and that led to 159 students in quarantine. That's important information to have. That's the last time we were in school. Now I want you to go to the next slide, please. 14 and 22. So this one doesn't have, and I have, I believe the 11th, it was updated, it's on our website. So now we have 20 staffs positive, and Dr. Hoker, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 57.
Yeah, I can give you the numbers for the 11th. We have, actually, I can give you the numbers from today. We have 20 staff positive, 10 quarantined, 1 pending. And we have 59 students positive and 48 in quarantine with 5 students pending. And that was as of noon today.
So 20 staff, 59 students. So this is key information, but people say, well, is it about safety? It's about being able, it's of course about safety, but it's about being able to deliver a program that is consistent and we can keep our students and our staff in the schools. Now, can you go back, hit backspace for a slide for me?
Backspace?
Yep.
Got it.
All right. So on the 19th, we had 14 staff members. Now we have 20. We had 22 students. Now we have 59. Those 22 students led to 159 students being quarantined. They also led to the number of staff that were quarantined. I don't have an algorithm to tell you how that will figure out, but we do have predictors in an upcoming slide. But this is key here. If today we were in school with 59 students positive, we would be more than doubling the number of students quarantined. And staff, because the students come in contact with staff as well. Now you could say, well, do you have to quarantine? It's actually, another key difference is, since the 19th, the Department of Health guidance because we're in the orange zone, we weren't in the orange zone yet on the 19th, we're in the orange zone now. The requirements for quarantine are even stricter now. Because we used to be able to say, okay, the student was in the room with the teacher. They were wearing a mask. It was a short period of time. Now the Department of Health guidance does not allow you to differentiate or use a mask as a social distancing tool. Whether you were wearing a mask or not, if you were in proximity without using social distancing to those, well, in proximity in a classroom, the guidance is that everyone within that classroom would then have to quarantine, mask or not. So it would make it even harder to not quarantine as many people as we did back in November. To this point, we'd be within, if we were open today, if tomorrow was our day to open schools, I would think within a week and a half, 2 weeks, we'd be closing again, just based upon the quarantine numbers. We would see what the real student positives and the staff positives that we have in place right now. Next slide, please.
Keep going.
Yes. Dr. Hooker, do you want to speak to this one? Because I think there's a problem. There's going to be a slide missing. This is not the updated one that was there, because you had a slide that, and you'll probably have to walk us through it, that spoke to the number of
Correct. I can,
positivities and the number of quarantines.
the presentation that was shared with parents and is on the website has the updated slide in it. And I can simply, what we were trying to show is the impact on each positive case has on staffing. So what the slide explains is if one high school student tests positive and they attend 4 classes on a given day, that would immediately quarantine 4 staff members. So assuming we have 5 high school students that test positive, that's a minimum of 20 staff members if they're attending different classes. Right now, we have 59 students that are positive. We understand that potentially all 59 of those students would not be present because some of them would be working fully remotely. But even if half of those students were present or a third of those students were present, the number of staff that would be impacted would be significant.
I'm sorry.
The same thing with middle school. Middle school students attend 6 classes, and that would be a minimum of 6 staff members that would have to quarantine based on the guidelines that are currently in place for high risk areas. At the elementary level, we would have a minimum of 2 staff members because they have their general class teacher plus a related arts teacher. And that's, again, these numbers and the amount of staff that would be impacted don't reflect classes where there are multiple staff members, paraprofessionals, or more than one teacher that are in that class, or in cases where we have additional staff that come into the room and provide related services. In addition, we would have transportation impacts, including bus drivers and bus aides if the student were receiving transportation from the district. When on November 19th, which was a critical day for us, as Mr. Cittadino addressed, we had cases that were quarantining 25 people at a time because the number of students in a class, even if it was 3 or 4 students in a class and then 2 teachers and the students on a bus and bus drivers, it was a significant impact that we were seeing. And what was happening was on that last day, November 20th, we had 76 staff members that were quarantined. And the issue became, even with our substitute pool, substitutes did not want to come into the building. We were increasing the number of substitutes, but every time we were increasing the number of substitutes, the substitutes we had in place were no longer interested in coming into the building, so we could not cover the classes. So that is a significant impact on the staff. So as of right now, we have 59 students that tested positive, that are currently positive, which is a significant increase from that number in November. This particular slide that is up here, we had shared this information with the task force just to go over some of the things that were happening. We've had multiple retirements and resignations for this school year that we have filled 16 of those positions permanently, and several of them, 5 here, that we had to cover with 6-period coverage. And that is because it has been difficult to staff this year for even permanent positions. We have reassigned staff members, and we have several retirements that have just recently been approved and that are pending, we're interviewing for now. The reason that relates to the situation and reopening is it's additional positions that have to be covered outside of the quarantine and COVID-related cases. The second part of this slide reflects the staff leaves of absences and positions that we've had to cover in addition to permanent positions. We had 8 positions covered with 6 periods. We have 5 that we've had to reassign staff in order to fill these positions, and 32 that were covered with substitutes, and this taxed our substitute population. And as you can see, we have positions here that we were not able to cover, and positions that are open. This slide was established on the 7th, and at this point we have 306 staff members that have been impacted by either testing positive or who have had to quarantine. So this just relates to the coverage that we have for staffing and the difficulty with providing the instruction consistently during in-person instruction.
I just have to interrupt. I apologize. Dr. Hoker did send me the updated one today, and it's probably somewhere behind this screen. So I apologize. You know, it's a user error on my part. So, you know, I apologize for not, I don't know where it's here somewhere. So I must have clicked the wrong one. I apologize. That's my fault.
Jill, if you want, I pulled it up. Do you want me to share?
Yes, if you don't mind. Yeah, I mean, I have it. I just must have clicked the wrong.
Yeah,
I don't.
get to the right screen.
Do you want me to stop sharing, Kel?
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure we have the accurate information. I don't want to.
The information in both presentations is accurate, but the
updated
information in the presentation that went out has some updated slide graphs, a little bit more user-friendly.
Yes, yes. So yeah, Kelly, if you have that, I apologize. Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yes, and I can share, and I think this is the right screen that we're looking at. Let me just.
Okay, you can share it now.
1 sec.
There you go. Okay. So now you're in control of that, right, Kel?
Oh, how's that? Or is that too big?
Looks fine to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Dr. Hoker, were you finished with your?
I think so. I think I pretty much covered this. And
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to, but at least we have it.
We have it. And again, that number, the currently updated as of today is 59. These numbers just keep changing daily, but 59 students who have tested positive and 20 staff members.
Okay.
Okay. So Dr. Tui is going to walk us through some of the survey results, a survey that we submitted to our parents this past week.
Thank you, Mr. Cedino. From the outset of the school year, we have been providing surveys to parents, and these results are meant to provide really an overview for the district administration as to the concerns and some of the requests of the district stakeholders. In our latest survey that was sent out right when we got back from the holiday break on or around January 5th, there were approximately 4,699 total responses. As of December, actually November 2020, the official district enrollment was about 7,987. Out of the total parent responses we received, which was again approximately 58% around total district enrollment, there were 44.5% of the parents electing to continue remote instruction for their students for at least a foreseeable future, and approximately 55.5% of the population, parent population or respondents stated that they would be electing to return their student in school once the district was open. On the next slide, the percentage of parent responses, one of the interesting components and part of the rationale for providing the survey to parents at the beginning of January was to gauge their interest in a different model of hybrid instruction. As we started out in-person instruction in October, we were at the 33% model, which was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday model where we had cohorts of divided into threes. There was some general concerns about the number of students attending in person. There were some, we did receive some parent responses specific to whether or not it was worth it to send their student for one half day during the course of the week. And part of the reason why we wanted to look at other models is to ensure that there would be some continued continuity of education when we did return within the hybrid model. Overall and overwhelmingly, 86.1% of the parents who responded to the survey said they would elect to the AABB model, which would be at a 50% capacity. We'll explain a little bit more of that as we transition later into the presentation, but again, overwhelmingly parent responses said that 86% wanted the AABB at a 50% capacity model when we did return to school. Of the overall respondents, again, of the 4,700 some odd individuals who responded to the survey, approximately 27.5% or about a quarter were from a specialized student group. This included students who had an IEP, a 504, were ELL, or had or were in the RTI program within the district. 51.5% of the respondents stated that if it was available, they would send their student in person for an additional day, either within the AA or the 33 AABB 50% or the 33% hybrid model. On the next
Dr.
slide.
Sui, can we just make sure we're on the right slide here?
Sure, if we could back up to.
Okay, keep backing up, I'm sorry. One more.
We should be on the slide that says start date feedback. I think we're going the wrong way.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I am going the wrong way. Oops, sorry about that.
Slide 19.
All right, I'm just gonna put it in a different mode for a second. Slide 19, okay.
So we're going to jump up to slide 15. Okay.
That one?
Nope, we covered that one. Next one.
You did that one?
We did. One more. 17, lucky number. Okay, so start date feedback. So just to provide a general overview of what the parents' parental responses were, again, from the group of parents who did respond to the survey. Approximately 69.9% or 70% of the parents requested a return date this school year. Obviously, it continues to be the district and district administration's goal to get the students back into the school buildings this year. We will continue towards that effort, obviously, as we look to continue at the current trends within the community. Out of that, approximately 70% of parents who are requesting a return to school date this year, approximately 37% of those believe that the start date of January 19th would be appropriate. 17.5% of the respondents who wanted to return to school in person this year stated that they believe that only when a vaccine was widely distributed to educators would it be safe to return. And approximately 15.1% of the respondents stated that a February 1st return date would be appropriate. Surprisingly, 31.1% of the population believe that a start date in September of 2021 would be an appropriate return date for students. And obviously, we continue to process all that data as we continue to review our return to school plans. On the next slide. So what are, at this point, the return to school options? Old Bridge Township Public Schools at this juncture is going to remain on a remote instruction model until at least Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. On or before February 16, 2021, Old Bridge Township Public Schools will consider returning students from specific specialized student groups. As of right now, the earliest the general education student population would be considered for a return to district would be on Monday, March 1st. When the district does return in person, the district will shift to that AABB 50% model. And again, we'll discuss more details in the subsequent slides. And the district plans to reevaluate this plan consistently. The district plans to remain fully remote schedule until we see the Old Bridge community infection rates on a downward trend. Part of the general areas of concern that we have received from both administrators, parents, students in some cases, and staff is the overwhelming pressure that many of them are feeling as we continue on this remote platform. I think that Mr. Citadino said it the best, that, our goal and will always be to get back on a 5 full day. And it's the best instruction is as the best in person within our community. Our teachers are doing a wonderful job. Our parents are continuing to support their students in the home, and we appreciate everyone's efforts during these difficult times. However, sometimes the schedule does need to adjust to some of the concerns that were brought to our attention. So we are instilling what we are calling Wellness Wednesdays. Effective for the week of January 19th. This first date would be on Wednesday, January 20th. Old Bridge Township Public Schools will be implementing a half-day schedule for all students from pre-K all the way through high school, with the goal of the afternoons being dedicated for students to catch up on missed work. They can also meet with their guidance counselors, school counselors, child study team case managers, SAC counselors, or teachers to address any concerns that they currently have with the remote instruction setting. During this time, teachers can utilize this time to communicate with students, parents, and plan for additional classroom activities. We've also created a link, which would be part of this presentation. And again, this presentation is on the district website, where you would be able to click here on that link on this slide and schedule an appointment with your school counselor, your SAC, or your child study team member. The goal with these Wellness Wednesdays is to ensure that the social and emotional well-being of our students continues to be at the forefront during these difficult times, and this will continue to evolve as Wellness Wednesdays continues throughout in the near future. So what does the AABB cohort look like? Currently, the AABB cohort is going to be on the next slide, scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being full remote on a half day. So on the next slide, the way that the AABB cohort will be divided is the Monday cohort, or cohort 1, will remain the same. So any student who was previously in the Monday cohort, which again was cohort 1, would remain in the same cohort. The Friday cohort, cohort 3, would remain the same as well. And those two cohorts will be renamed Silver and Purple. The Wednesday cohort, or cohort 2, would be divided into 2 groups, half of which would attend on Monday, Tuesday, and half of which would attend on Thursday, Friday. So the Silver cohort would attend on Monday, Tuesday. The Purple cohort would attend on Thursday, Friday. Wednesdays would be all remote half days for the entire district, as we continue to institute Wellness Wednesdays upon our return to school within this hybrid model. On Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, all students would run an early dismissal schedule. All students in self-contained classes who previously attended 3 days would be able to attend all 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Students who choose to attend in a resource pullout class, an ICR setting, an ELL setting, would be able to attend 4 days as well. And any student who has a 504, or again, an English language learner, would be attending for 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The preschool program would continue to attend 2 days until we determine program capacity. Part of that is because some of the preschoolers who said they would attend have not attended yet this year. And we continue to have students turn 3 and therefore enter into our preschool program. So as we continue to evaluate our total number of preschool numbers and to ensure social distancing components within the preschool program, for the time being, the preschool program would run 2 days. That does not include the full day preschool classes. The full day preschool classes would attend 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The half day preschool classes would be 2 days a week. And again, just a summary of what we've talked about so far. Again, we were in phase 1 from September 8th until October 9th, which was 100% remote. We did move to phase 2 from October 12th until November 20th, which was the 33% hybrid model. We unfortunately had to move back to phase 1 on November 23rd through approximately February 15th. We are looking to begin in-person instruction for special education self-contained programs and potentially additional grades based on some of the community-based trends with the COVID-19 numbers. Tentatively, March 1st would be an in-person instruction for all remaining grades. Anyone who wasn't in person effective on February 16th would then come back on Monday, March 1st. As far as the impact on winter athletics, as of right now, all winter athletics is outlined by the NJSA scheduled for season 2 are commencing, with the exception of right now boys and girls basketball. Old Bridge High School boys and girls basketball can participate in practice until February 1st in an outdoor setting only. Regular participation in games could potentially occur after February 1st. The Old Bridge Athletic Department continues to examine all of the needs of the students who are participating in extracurricular activities, and has begun to create specific sport by sport protocols for the safe participation of students for the winter sports program, as outlined by NJSAA and district safety protocols. Students who receive related services continue to receive related services both in person and on virtual and through virtual platforms. At this time, if we are commencing with in-person instruction on or around February 16th, obviously the students who will be in person will ideally get some of their related services in person, and students who are continue to remain on a remote setting will continue to remain be provided with their related services in a remote setting. And we will continue to re-examine the related service weeks, specifically to the 3-to-1 model. Our next 3-to-1 related service week is I believe on February 8th. And we continue to look at our delivery model for related services in an attempt to ensure that students are receiving the outlined services within their IEPs. In terms of parameters governing reentry,
I can take over this part here. So
Great.
these are the parameters laid out by the Department of Health for schools. And that document, if you can just easily Google it, New Jersey Department of Health Guidelines for Schools. And it's updated periodically as new guidelines come out from either CDC or the Department of Health. So this was a guiding factor in where we're at in November as well, when a few times we had to close schools because of one or more of these cases, where you have 2 or more cases in a school within 14 days that are linked together by some activity in the school. And that could be within students within the same classroom, but who are in different classrooms. So if I have a first grader and a third grader in the classroom, but that's the only place that there shows to be a link between the students demonstrating positivity according to with COVID, then the recommendation is to close the school 14 days because of some of the guidance that is there. We had that situation at Miller School where we had students in first grade, third grade, and a staff member all test positive, but there was no cases at home that were related to. So the only thing they had in common was the school. So we were trying to identify, whereas the common source was leading to an outbreak within the school. So we had to close Miller School. We also had a situation like that at Memorial School. Now, if you notice that none of these parameters speak to the size of the school, it's 2 or more cases. So it doesn't matter if it's Grissom School, Cooper School, or Old Bridge High School. It doesn't matter if it's Old Bridge High School or a little tiny Jointure High School up in Sussex County. It's 2 or more cases. So this is relevant to when people say, well, why can this school district do this? Why can't we do this? How come that school district can do it? When you have school districts like Matawan, where across the town, they averaging 5 cases of COVID a day, not 5 cases in the schools, 5 cases across the town, that it's reasonable that none of those or one of those 5 cases would be in a school. When you look at our data and you see that we have 59 students alone in the school district with COVID, under these very strict guidance that we receive from the Department of Health, it would be impractical to keep the schools open. We would open them just in time to close them again with the numbers that we're seeing right now. So that answers this question as to why Holmdel can look at it. And don't be surprised if that data changes. A lot of districts are having their board meetings this week, just like we are, and they're re-examining their plans. I know there are several districts in Middlesex County that have never opened because their numbers have always been higher than ours because they're in a different place. And that's why the governor has given guidance to boards of education that they have to examine these cases themselves based upon their town. Obviously, Perth Amboy, New Brunswick, Piscataway Students have never spent a day in school. Perth Amboy usually has higher numbers than us. Right now, they don't. Overall total numbers are higher, but right now we're averaging higher numbers per day. So when you ask about Homedale, when they're averaging 12 cases a day, a lot different than we're at 49 cases right now. They have 875 total cases in their township since the pandemic started. We have 4,240. It's a different comparison. You can't make the comparison saying, why are they doing this and we can't? The same for Marlboro, 1,900 cases. We have 4,240. And then those cases, how many of those are school-aged children? How many of those school-aged children will impact one of these situations where you have 2 or more cases in a school, where they will quarantine staff in the school? You can't compare them that way, and that's why districts have to examine this information individually. So some people may say, well, what's East Brunswick doing? Well, East Brunswick, which has over, I think, 49,000 residents, I could be wrong, it's in the 40s, we have 65,000, but they have less than half the number of cases than we do. They don't have less than half the population, but they have less than half the cases. Why is that? I don't know. Maybe there could be a deeper dive into why Old Bridge has higher numbers of cases than similar towns that have similar populations. But in East Brunswick, their total population is just over 2,000 total cases since the pandemic started. We have 4,240, but we don't have double the population. So you take that information and they're averaging, let me see, right now 12 a day. And it's easier to do it that way when you have to open the schools. But we'll see what happens. Right now, their middle school's not open, their high school's not open. They're not supposed to open until February. And based upon the numbers they put out today, I promise you, they're not gonna be able to open some of their elementary schools. It just doesn't fit within the Department of Health guidelines that are for all districts, not just us. These are for all districts. There was an article today that came out NJ.com only about 5 hours ago from Adam Clark, great writer. His article was titled, "Vaccinating Teachers Won't Be Enough." I'm hoping it will be enough. But in the article highlights, because I hear this all the time, why does every district around us open but us? Why is every district around us going back and we're still remote? According to the article, with today's data, only 79 schools across the state are in person or have in-person plans immediately right now. 340 are on full remote. That's a big difference. We are a larger district in a larger town. We're not going to fit into that 79 range. Currently, those are the numbers. You can refute them and say, where are the facts? You can look at the article yourself, nj.com today. It's by Adam Clark. So when it talks about vaccinating, and is it enough? And Mr. Cittadino, have you thought out of the box? Well, I think we thought out of the box when we were one of the only districts and the first district in Middlesex County, I'll stand by that number, to test our staff, to have voluntary testing for our staff, for our athletes. That was something that we did from the beginning. We've partnered with the township, and I can't thank them enough for partnering with us, to have testing on school property, to make it available for everyone across the community, because that's how serious this pandemic is. So why did that happen? Well, Old Bridge was identified as a hotspot. I'm not saying it's a hotspot. That wasn't my information that it was a hotspot. It was a November 10th article that came out that was, I believe, in the Suburban, that identified Old Bridge as a hotspot. In the article, if you give me a second. Since October, the number of newly reported cases have increased across all age and gender groups, and they have all been impacted. That article was followed up on December 23rd, and they said since then, the numbers have increased. So since we were identified as a hotspot by the county, as reported to by the local media, they followed up that article on December 23rd and said, we've only increased the numbers. So if we weren't able to have in-person instruction when we're identified as a hotspot in a high-risk zone as identified by the state of New Jersey Department of Health, in which we didn't have enough teachers and staff because they were quarantined according to Department of Health guidance from the state of New Jersey. If the media and the county is reporting that our numbers have only increased and we're only more of a hotspot as of December 23rd, how is it practical? How is it responsible to open the schools to in-person education when we'll only have to close them because we'll be forced by law to follow the quarantine guidelines from the Department of Health and be the exception for the 340 schools in the larger districts that are making that decision? I'm telling you, it's not possible during this. I wish and pray that it was, and I do see that there's an end to this, and I do see that we're almost there. But when we open, we want to open for good. We want to open the doors, welcome our students back at 50%. Some of the parents will still keep our kids home. They'll keep their kids home. Some will send them in. You have to remember that our survey doesn't speak to the 3,288 parents that children that weren't responded for. So I don't know, maybe they're happy with things the way they're going, maybe they're not, but when you don't respond to it, that's 3,208 people who didn't respond. They all received it. So maybe some of those students will come back too. But when we open the doors, we want to make sure we're open until the end of June. We don't want to open and then have me calling your homes every night saying, these are the number of students that are impacted. These are the number of students that are quarantined. These are the number of staffs that are impacted. These are the number of staff that are quarantined. I'm closing this, and this school. That would be a tremendous disservice to our students to get them back and have them send them out again and then bring them back again. I want to do it the right way. I think the task force wants to do it the right way. I know our teachers want to do it the right way. So what else are we doing? I had a phone call today with one of only 5 outside providers for the vaccine. We went through our insurance. I worked with Mr. Mara. We are looking to be the only school district in the state of New Jersey right now to have an outside provider provide the vaccine within our schools to our teachers only. If we can get that done, if the state of New Jersey allows teachers to, in 1B, because all teachers are on 1B, they haven't opened up for teachers yet. They moved firemen, policemen, God bless them, they should be moved there into 1B priority, but teachers and people from the age 75 and older are still in 1B and sitting waiting for the vaccine to be available to them. The day that happens, I can have that vaccine brought to the district within days of that happening. You know, there's still going to be I have to go by their schedule. I'm sure they're very busy. But we're working with our nurses. Our nurses have volunteered, several of our nurses have volunteered to provide the vaccine to our staff. And that's why we have to jump through a few hoops to work with insurance companies and our insurance companies and their insurance company to allow that to happen. With that happening, there is a good probability, if the timeline allows and the state gets moving, to have our teachers receive their second vaccine by mid-February, to the 3rd week of February. That would be tremendous. That would be a game changer. That would offer a lot of hope and support to put this behind us, get past this darkest year in education in our lifetime, and do it so responsibly, do it so that it's done in the right way, so that everyone has that ability. At least if the students come back, I don't have to worry about quarantining the teachers, even if the pandemic is still here, because they'll have the protections in place. And that's what we're looking for. I want to thank everyone for what they've heard from the presentation. If there's questions or comments from the board, I'd love to hear them. Thank you for the support of my administrative team and this board throughout this process. And of course, the public and the parents. We've received a lot of concerns, and we've received a lot of positive comments as well.
Mr. Cittadino,
Yes.
I applaud your working to get the vaccine for the teachers as fast as possible. You did mention about being 75 and over. I heard on the radio today that they changed it to 65, but that the reservations, or lack of a better term, are already out till April. One day.
The federal guidance recommended 65. The state doesn't have to follow that federal guidance, 65 and older. Their concern is obviously to have the amount of vaccine available. When you take a pool of people, obviously the pool of people from 75 to whatever age who are not living in an assisted living place is smaller than the pool of people living from 65 to the people living in assisted living. So when you open the pool larger, you have to make sure the vaccine's available. So one, and there's a great article about that, I believe it's on NJ.com as well, just because, no, it was actually related to New York. It was related to the New York situation. Just because the federal has made the recommendation to open 65, the state still has to approve that step as well.
Mr. Cittadino, I have a couple of questions.
Thank you,
On
Mr.
the
Webb.
new proposed plan of the AABB, how much instruction time will be given on each day of those 4 days?
I'm going to have Dr. Tweed address that. Go ahead.
Yes, it's a half-day schedule, so it'd be a 4-hour day for the students. Part of the component that we still have major concerns about is having food in the classrooms. So therefore, on the AABB schedule, at least initially, students will come in, they'll have a half-day schedule. It'll be on an early dismissal schedule, so they would have 4 hours of instruction and no lunch.
And I think historically, the instruction time by grade levels was the net instruction time for elementary was around 5 hours and 40 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that, and slightly higher in the middle and the high schools. Is this 4 hours in there going to be straight instruction, or there's any part of it is not going to be instruction time?
The way the current schedule works is it's mostly instruction time. There's a small period for the teachers to have their prep time, where it's listed as related arts. The related arts teachers on the elementary level push into the classrooms. At least that's what we were doing in October. And so it minimized student movement throughout the building to the greatest extent possible.
All right, well, that certainly puts us much closer to getting a bigger percentage of instruction time than we're certainly getting on the current plan. A couple of other questions. The cases that are being reported positive on the graph that comes up at the opening of the school website, they test as positive, but do we have any follow-up record to see who of them actually becomes COVID or becomes hospitalized? Because one of the things that we've, I think, apparently learned from some of the testing that's going on, a lot of people, particularly younger people, have had the virus and not even been aware of it. And I'm not saying you necessarily can keep all of that, but it would be a little comforting if you find out that a lot of those things that test positive and you have to react to, and I understand that. But at the same time, we should bring, I think, a higher level of accuracy to data, so we don't just leave the bad stuff hanging out there without knowing that there may be some positive things on the other side. And the other thing that was mentioned about the impact of quarantine teachers. Now, it's my understanding that the teachers are, for the most part, teaching from home. Is that correct?
They have the option to teach from home now or teach from their workplace, but I would agree that a majority are teaching from home now.
And therefore, when they're quarantined, that doesn't impair their ability, unless they become sick, doesn't impair their ability to perform the job, correct?
Well, in one way, it impairs the ability, but it also impairs the ability for us to put someone in the classroom to cover them. So if the students are still in place, because the students weren't necessarily impacted, or then you'd still have to have a teacher in place. And what Dr. Hoker was going through over, we don't have the ability to have coverage for that. In fact, the problem with substitutes is so bad in the state of New Jersey right now that they've just loosened the guidance just yesterday on how long a substitute can be in a classroom, because there's a definite teacher shortage. One, because the preparatory programs aren't able to get the teachers out during the pandemic because they're not having the ability to do their student teaching piece. And two, the pandemic has pushed a lot of people away from providing substitute services within the schools. So yes, on one hand, that the teacher like we had in the elementary school, we had teachers on quarantine. As long as they weren't ill and they could provide online instruction, but you still have to have a certified teacher in the classroom to oversee the students while the online teacher is at home.
All right, but again, right now, when we're 100% virtual, there's nobody in the classroom. That's what I was addressing.
Oh, yeah, that's correct, yes. If it's teachers quarantined right now or while on remote, then as long as they're healthy, we've had some teachers who are sick beyond the point where they can't perform their functions with COVID, but we've had many that continue teaching because they may be either asymptomatic. And to get to your point before, we really track that data because even asymptomatic students can spread the virus, and that is why we're required to quarantine. So that's one of the reasons why we have to track that data, because we have to quarantine according to whether you're positive, not you're positive with symptoms.
And the other observation I had was when the presentation showed the situation that we're classified as a high-risk zone now, the recommendation was that the district should consider, not they must, should consider closing or going all virtual. I think it's been said numerous times that was the tipping point where you had to go virtual. It doesn't seem to say that on the chart you presented.
No, I don't know what chart you mean, but it does say that several times on there, the consider. And that's something we went over with Mr. Partner as our attorney. When temperature drops below a certain temperature outside, they say you should consider putting salt down on the sidewalk outside of your business to prevent people from falling. And once a document says you should consider doing something and you're absent from doing it, and when there is some fall or when there's something or someone becomes sick or worse, the first thing they're going to do is, well, you were advised by the Department of Health to consider putting remote education in place, and you were one of the 340 districts that didn't.
My observation is a little more simple. Consider does not mean should or must. That's all. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Cittadino, can I just go back? I just want to add that as far as tracking these students and staff that are positive and in quarantine, in addition to once we get that information, it is all verified. And as someone who's in quarantine becomes positive, it is tracked. Those numbers are updated. And then days later, we're following up, and at the end of the quarantine period, we're following up again just to ensure that, where they are in I'll say in that process. And in cases that are pending, even following up there, that's one of the components of the contact tracing that our nurses are part of. And it is an ongoing and daily process that we are keeping those records of, whether someone is ill or remains asymptomatic.
One of the things that you bring up, Dr. Hoger, is also the change because the high status, again, when a region goes into the high zone, they kind of tighten the reins on you a little bit and make it even more difficult. So when the states, the Department of Health, first the CDC made recommendations and the Department of Health adopted them using a 10-day quarantine, not because there was any medical proof that a 10-day quarantine was more appropriate than a 14-day quarantine. They just hoped that by using a 10-day, more people would quarantine appropriately and not say, well, I can't stay home for 14 weeks and not do it. 14 days and not do it. So, but once we enter into the high zone, they mandatory kick us from, you cannot quarantine for 10 days to 14. So if you come in contact with someone who is a positive, then you have to quarantine for 14 days if you're in a high region, which we are. So it makes it harder again to come out of the quarantine area.
Okay.
Madam President?
Go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
I just have some commentary to make on the presentation. And first, I want to sincerely thank Mr. Cittadino and the administration for putting all the numbers together, which are quite accurate. I can tell you with much certainty that being the fire chief here in Old Bridge, I get to see the same numbers, but I get to see more in-depth numbers based upon the county level. And we are currently in a position where we are peaked. I think right now, today speaking, I think we're at the worst position than we have been throughout this entire pandemic. We're in a place right now that we didn't even have back in the spring. So I concur with Dave. I concur with the presentation that, you know, at this moment in time, things are pretty nasty out there, and I see it every day. But I want to just say that the universal precautions do work. They do work. Masks, hand sanitizer. I can tell you, as the fire chief, you know, we're put into many different situations, and you know, we work around the situation by utilizing the precautions necessary. And you know, we need to find a happy median because our students need to get back to school. And I know that we've all been working diligently. We've all been working day and night to try to find that perfect balance. And at right this second, the balance is not there based upon the extreme numbers that we're seeing. And I agree with Dave. At this moment, it's a tough swallow. You know, our goal is to keep everyone safe. Our goal is to ensure that you know, we have a safe environment for our students and our staff, and that's a fiduciary responsibility that's on the superintendent and the Board of Education. With that said, I think that, you know, we've vetted as a board, we've argued, we have definitely debated this issue before when we were at this point back late last year. You know, we had a split board on what we should do, and I'm sure that we're going to have a split board again because there's different philosophies out there on how we should proceed. However, I believe, and you know, Mr. Parton can, you know, correct me, the board is only acting in an advisory role here. The board does not have the final decision. The board may be 5-4, say, hey, send kids back to school. However, that ultimate decision is made by whom, Mr. Parton?
It is an administrative determination. It's articulated between the superintendent and his team, Department of Health, and the Department of Education. So yes, Mr. Dunn, the Board of Education is an advisory role here.
So that means regardless of our decision, the superintendent and his administrative staff will make the decision that they believe is in the best interest of the students, the staff, and the community. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in consultation with the advisory committee, with the reopening committee, and with the Board of Education. But yes, it is an administrative role.
Okay. So I just want to just get out there that, you know, the numbers that the administration have shown are very accurate, and the projections for February seem a little bit better than what is today. You know, obviously, as the flu and cold season starts to wrap up, people aren't going to be as susceptible to the virus. And plus, once vaccinations start, you know, you will see an improvement. And that's why I think that the universal thought process out there, at least at the county level that I'm aware of, is that things should be improving sometime in mid to late February, where you're going to see that downward trend. And trends are something we utilize to determine the future. And that's what this administration is trying to do, is to try to predict. And when you're dealing with a situation like a pandemic, you know, all the science and mathematics in the world is not a given. And you have to go by what the numbers are on the ground. So at this point, you know, we all have a responsibility to keep our kids safe. And yes, we have a responsibility to educate as well. And we need to find that happy balance. And I'm hoping tonight, after we hear, you know, the 100+ people that are out there I see in the virtual world, that, you know, we will make a decision which is in the best interest of our students and our staff and the health and safety and educational enrichment of the entire town. So with that said, I just wanted to make a few things clear, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Before I move on, is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Yes, I agree with you 100%, Mr. Dunn. I believe several meetings ago, Mr. Parton, our legal attorney, said that we have very little input on the opening of the schools, okay? I don't know who formed the advisory committee, because I found out all these things a couple of days before the meeting, okay? But again, Mr. Parton, thank you for clarifying that the board has very little input. It's the administration that makes the final decision. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I know, Mr. Cittadino, you're probably tired of talking to me. You already know all my questions and concerns, but really minutes before our meeting started, I stumbled across an article. And so you mentioning yours, I'm going to share mine. It's from, hold on. It's called Doctors Begin to Crack COVID's Mysterious Long-Term Effects. And it's from the Washington Journal, if you wanted to Google that. And it talks about how even children or adults who think that they weren't hit that hard, that they weren't hospitalized, that they are coming across with long-term effects such as severe fatigue, memory lapse, heart problems. So this virus is still very new. It's a year old. We still have a lot to unfortunately uncover about it. So thank you.
I agree. That's a difficult part. You know, there was a lot of obviously expedited research on the vaccine, but you can't expedite long-term impact of a new virus. Now, there's been other strains of COVID, but obviously this is a new strain of COVID, and a COVID that is or has, changed and altered. There's other strains of it out there that are saying are more contagious. I pray that we don't have to experience that. But you're right that it's hard to know all the long-term effects on something new. Only time will tell is the best way to sum up what you just said.
Joe?
Yes, Mr. DeCrema.
Yeah, excuse me. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Dunn said. I'm not naive to the situation. Everybody knows what's going on out there. And I respect what Mr. Parton said about that we're here in an advisory capacity. And so be it. I thank Mr. Cittadino and Central Administration for an unbelievable job of countless hours of blood, sweat, and tears. As far as the schools, though, I want to go on record with Mr. Dunn, and I think Mr. Sulikowski is saying it's time to open. That's it. Thank you.
I didn't hear what you said, Mr.
I didn't hear that last part.
I just want to go on record with Mr. Dunn, and I believe Mr. Sulikowski, that I think it's time to open. Of course, with precautions and restrictions, and not just, plain vanilla coming back like a normal time. There would have to be stipulations, and I think the parents should have a choice if they want to or not. Thank you.
Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, I just still hope that we could provide for the over a third, 1 out of 3 of the parents that wanted to go back to school by January 19th, while still keeping them safe and letting them have the ability to choose whether they want to go to school and to participate in the programs that go along with it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Ellis Foster?
Yes, so I thank everyone for all of the work they put in and the information provided. It kind of spells out why there's a delay in the opening. I look at the role of what we need to do, at least the way I look at this is I look at not only what people want, but the facts and the data and the science. I know everyone wants to be back. There is not one person, regardless of what some people may try to proclaim, that we don't want our children back. Everyone, teachers, administration, families, students, everyone wants their children back. To say that no one in this administration or this board wants the children back is ridiculous. Everyone wants the children back. However, it is our responsibility to look at the data and the safety of our students and our staff. Of course our parents want their children back. Of course they do. But we have to look at the data. We can't, did we not hear of the implications of people here being tested positive and the quarantine impact? We are at a peak. We are at the highest ever. If we go back next week, of course people are still going to be positive. Yes, then we'd have to quarantine. Classes shut down. So your child and students are in and then out and the added stress. Of course we want it, but we have to take the judgment of the science of what is going on actually. We've had 115 deaths in this town. It may not be who you know, but it's who somebody in this town knows. As Mr. Dunn said, we have to follow the precautions. It works. Social distancing, mask wearing. Opening up the schools is opening it up for more deaths, for more sickness. As we said, the light is there. I thank Mr. Citadino to reaching out and getting the contractor in so that our staff doesn't have to wait in lines or wait for a doctor or wait for CVS. We can get them in immediately. We can get them vaccinated. We can get that follow-up, and we can be open and open for the rest of the year. I know if I say I want us to back January 19th, everyone will love me. I don't care about that. I'm not here to make people like me. I'm here to educate and make sure our students and our staff don't die or aren't getting sick. So if it means we have to wait 3 more weeks, that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
Would anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Callie? Unmute. Unmute.
Sorry, I don't think there's much I can add to what Mrs. Ellis Foster very passionately stated, but I want to thank Mr. Citadino and Dr. Hoker and the rest of the administration and the task force, because they are all volunteering countless hours and abuse serving on this task force. But I agree with what Ms. Ellis Foster said, and the data and the guidance that we're receiving from the experts are guiding us in the direction of keeping the status quo and staying remote for the time being. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and like Ms. Alice Foster said, thank you, Mr. Citadino, for reaching out and trying to get, our teachers ahead of the rest as far as vaccinating them. And there's not much more I can say, but I agree again with what Ms. Alice Foster said. I know that everybody, not everybody, I have heard from some parents who are happy with what the status quo, remote learning. They know that it's not, 100% the optimum place for their kids to be, but their kids are learning, and they're more worried that their kids are going to come home and they're going to get sick, and they're going to make some of their elderly relatives sick or some of their immune compromised relatives sick. And I have heard from a lot of happy people. But anyway, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I agree with Ms. Alice Foster. I know that, if we all said that, yep, open up schools next Tuesday, that some people would be very happy, and that would make us very popular, but safety has to come first. I don't want to see anybody else get sick, and I don't want to see anybody else die. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Callie. I think we've heard from all of our board members now. I will just add my 2 cents. I'm not going to, everything that Ms. Ellis Foster said and Ms. Kelly said, I concur with 1,000%. This is not a popularity contest. We have to do what we believe is right. Whether, it's not a popularity contest. We have to go by the data. And I believe that there are a lot of parents that are in agreement with us. But I also believe that they're too afraid to speak up, because there are parents that, have some negative things to say, and that's fine. That's fine. Everybody has their opinion. But there are a lot of positive people. There are a lot of people that have reached out to me. And again, I go by the data. It's regardless, it's by the data. Mr. Cittadino, Dr. Hoker, Dr. Tui put together a fantastic presentation, and you can't dispute the numbers. You can't dispute what's in that presentation. And for me to go against that would not be the right thing to do. So that being said, I believe we've all had a chance to speak, so I'm going to move on. And so the next thing on our agenda is, I already started sharing. There were correspondence, and I don't know, for next week, Mr. Mara will read any correspondence that we have. Do we have any correspondence tonight, Mr. Mara?
There is no correspondence, Ms. Carroll.
Okay, and the other thing before we get to hearing of the residents is any special committee reports that will be next week? Anything that we're going to, Ms. Callie? You're muted, honey.
Okay, I keep making that same mistake. I apologize. I do not have a report, but I just wanted to mention that we are having a meeting of the Community Relations and Engagement Committee that has been working with the District Positivity Committee and Dr. Hoker. We are meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock. There is a Zoom link. Is that been put up on the website yet? It has. It's up on the website for anybody that wants to join us. I believe we are following this format. We are.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. And I don't think there are any other committee reports. So with that being said, we're going to move to the hearing of the residents on agenda items only. This is agenda items only. And Mr. Parton, can you give us a little briefing on how this goes?
Yeah, just because there are so many people here, fortunately from the public tonight to participate in this process, I just want to clarify based on last week's discussions, we are going to follow your existing bylaw that's been in place since April 1999, which is bylaw 0167 about the 5-minute speaking limitation. No one gets to speak twice until everybody's had a chance to speak once, and the total time for anybody is 5 minutes, regardless of how many issues they want to talk about. And also, just in terms of format, please keep in mind that this is a public comment section. And this one's for agenda items, so I don't know that there's going to be a lot here. But with both public comment sections, it is public comment. It is not public questions, which is probably okay because Mr. Cittadino's report was comprehensive to say the least. I think all the information is out there. But the public comments are obviously more than welcome as long as they are not disruptive to the meeting. And everybody should have a fair opportunity to participate.
Okay.
So were you sharing? I don't think you're sharing the.
Oh, I'm going to share that right now. I apologize. Yes.
That's okay. Nothing.
Sorry. There we go. Okay. Can you see it now? Okay, so once again, if you are on the Zoom call, you can raise your hand, the little icon to indicate that you want to speak. And if you're on the phone, please select *9 when you would like to speak. And when announced, you press *6 to unmute. Okay, and once again, just to reiterate, Mr. Parton, this is just a comment section. It's not going to be a back and forth. It's not a Q&A, not a back and forth. You can just please, by all means, we welcome you to share your thoughts and concerns, and but it will just be comment section. Okay. So first up will be Mr. O'Neill. Looks like you've had your hand up for quite some time. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Tim O'Neill. I'm the president of the Old Bridge Education Association. And I would like to speak about the reentry plan that Mr. Cittadino presented on, the task force, and the role of teachers. But before I do that, I want to take a minute to acknowledge the contributions of the education support professionals who have made what we've accomplished so far possible, and without whom we would not be able to even attempt to move back to in-person instruction. from the bus drivers and aides who've been delivering food to the families who need it, to the secretaries and field and maintenance crews who've kept the district functioning, and all of the technology workers who've kept us connected. Thank you all. Though the focus of our discussions is often the students and the teachers, we're also thinking about all of you, the paraprofessionals, nurses, counselors, and other ESPs. Now, I want to acknowledge that we're all trying to do our best and do what we think is right. And I know this includes parents, educators, administrators, board members, and myself. I also understand that many people are angry about the situations we find ourselves in right now. And it's hard to direct that anger at the virus that is causing our problems. And it's tempting to instead direct that anger at people who don't actually deserve it, including our teachers. Specifically, I've heard about anger and negative comments about teachers circulating the district. And I would like to make a few things clear. Only a handful of teachers were invited to attend a few of the task force's many meetings to provide input as educators. In general, nobody asked teachers what they want. Your child's teacher did not decide that the district would delay reopening for in-person instruction and should not be blamed for any part of the situation. Many teachers would actually be happy to return despite the risk, but to have a chance at staffing the buildings and sustaining it, we need everybody. Many educators can't return in person because the increased risk of exposure for them or members of their families will put lives in danger. But again, those teachers were not on the task force. Through most of the pandemic, I have been the only individual on the task force representing the teachers and other OBA members. And in every meeting, teachers and OBA members have been vastly outnumbered by the other stakeholders. Now, I've represented the OBA throughout the process, and it's my responsibility in my role as president to protect the rights and safety of each and every one of my members. Like everyone else in this community, they all have various concerns, from childcare to the quality of education to their own health and safety. When looking at all of these concerns, the issues that are literally life and death have to take precedence, and that has guided me throughout my participation in the task force. The task force also includes parents, administrators, and experts in various important areas: health and safety, technology, sanitation, personnel, transportation, and education. I firmly believe that every one of them is trying to do the right thing. And we all really want the same things. We all want to be back to normal. We all want students and teachers back in the classroom. However, we don't spend our time in our meetings talking about what we want because that doesn't really matter. We spend our time focusing on the nuts and bolts of reopening in person and the important questions we have to answer before we can do so. Can we staff the buildings? Can we sustain reopening? And most importantly, can we make it safe? Unfortunately, the answer to all these questions right now is no. Not with new cases on the rise and hospitals filling up. Not with the community spread and the resulting quarantines. We tried in the fall when the state, county, and especially Old Bridge were in a much better situation, and we couldn't sustain it then. We certainly wouldn't be able to now. The good news is the distribution of the vaccine has already begun. It's slated to become available to educators soon, and administration and the Board of Ed are doing great work to make it available to Old Bridge educators as soon as possible. My hope is that by the new projected in-person opening date, the spread of the virus will be in decline and the majority of our educators will be vaccinated. If that is the case, I believe we will be able to staff the buildings. We will be able to sustain opening, and we will be able to do it in a safe environment. When you choose to be cautious, and you're right to be cautious, you don't receive any validation. The bad thing that you're cautious about and trying to avoid just doesn't happen, but there's no proof that your decision prevented it. However, if you choose to act recklessly and something bad happens, it's clear to everyone that it's the result of your poor decision. As one stakeholder in this community who represents over 1,000 others, I'm proud and grateful that our administration and our elected officials have acted cautiously throughout this ordeal. And I know that you will remain consistent in prioritizing the health and safety of every member of this community above all else. I know that we are all frustrated right now and emotions are running high, but we cannot allow our emotions to cloud our judgment.
5 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Carroll? Excuse me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I misunderstood where Mr. O'Neill was going with his comments. That was actually not on an action agenda item for tonight. So just as far as the following comments, we have a pretty short agenda tonight. We need to limit public comments during this portion to action items on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so I see there are a lot of hands raised. You will have a chance at the end, and it's going to be a very quick agenda session. So if you're raising your hand to speak about, and yes, thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Parton. If you're raising your hand to speak about the reopening plan, if you can just put your hand down for a minute, and you can raise your hand back at the end. We will let every single person that wants to speak, but please only raise your hand if you have something that is actually on the agenda action items. Okay. I see some hands going down. I see couple hands still up. So I'm assuming that you have something other than the reopening plan to discuss. Okay. Joseph Coco, I am going to just ask you to unmute yourself on agenda items only, action items only. If you unmute yourself, you can speak. Joseph? No? Okay. I'm going to go to, I'm going to skip over him. Chris, if you unmute yourself, you can speak agenda action items only. No. Okay, Chris, no? Okay, I'm gonna go down to Jay. Where's Jay? Jay, you can unmute action items only.
Yes, hi, thank you. Just
Jay.
in reference to, I guess, action items, I heard that some resources were going to be made available. In reference to resources made to help the mental health of the children throughout this, we've reached out to guidance counselors of the school who were told to us to just speak to local therapists that can help children. I'm just curious during this duration what resources would be made available to children.
Okay, so again, what we're going to do is, this is not a Q&A, Jay. We will try to address your questions at the end, but thank you for your comment and your question. And, you know, if Mr. Cittadino or Dr. Tui can address that at the end, okay? Is that okay?
I just want to clarify that, you know, I don't want to overstep my bounds. I know it's the board's meeting, but I'd like to, you know, if there's questions available, I'd like to answer them at some point, limit them. You know, it has to take place within the time period. It's not going to be a back and forth. If they want to ask me a question, like, you know, give me your questions, and then we're going to hang up, and then I'm going to answer your questions. We're not going to go back and forth. So in reference to that gentleman's questions, you know, we have multiple resources on our website for the social and emotional learning of our students and their wellness and mental health. If you can direct yourself there. Actually, the counselor at Chiragh has done a great job putting them up universally for the district. So if you don't find what you're looking for there, please just reach out to me. And if you have resources, it sounded like you're a provider, or thinking that's what I got from that. So if you have other things you want to share, then please do so, and I will talk them with you. I'm a better phone person, so if you give me your phone number, it's easier for me to talk to you and go that way. So if you email me your phone number, I'll give you a call back and we can discuss it that way.
Mr. Cittadino, can I just also add that one of the resources that we will be providing is through the YMCA. They are in the process of creating multiple webinars for parents in regard to supports for mental health for our students. That was an announcement we were making at the end of this meeting, and that will be hopefully happening within the next week or so. along with webinars that our counselors themselves are creating on specific topics. There was information that went out last week with the Parent Weekly Update on the January infographic, and all of those dates for the particular webinars will be posted as soon as they become available, hopefully by the end of this week.
Thank you, Dr. Hoker. Yes, thank you for answering the questions. So we have two more comments. I'm going to Amy. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and please state your name and your comment on agenda items.
Amy and Brian Fitzgerald. We are parents that are very frustrated with the reopening process. And I just came out to comment that I find it very unnerving that you do not allow chat and that you keep the comments to such a minimum. As we get to know this community, we have found that many parents are very upset with the lack of reopening, and we don't find your data to be as comprehensive as you guys lead on. We would like to know the mortality rate of the teachers and the students so we can accurately predict what we want to do with our children. The caseload, because of the size of our community, we don't feel is the proper number to be using to determine what happens with our children. And I think that given that you guys are still collecting salaries based on taxpayer dollars, that we would like to have you listen to our concerns and not use bylaws and other time limits to not hear our objections to the plan. And I'd also like you to consider the damage you're doing to these children by not having them educated in a proper manner.
Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm going to need to interrupt you there. I'm so sorry. This is for agenda items only. We have an opportunity at the end of this meeting to speak on district items. That's the way we run our meetings. That's our bylaws. And you are welcome to say whatever at the end of the meeting. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to limit you to, agenda items only. It was already discussed.
Well, thank you. I think I just said my piece. So,
okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your comment.
If anyone caught that and can jot down what he said and get it to me, I couldn't hear anything he said.
No, I couldn't really either, but he can call back at the end if he chooses.
Yes.
Okay, I do have a hand raised from Amelia. And once again, please, keep this to the agenda items as per Mr. Parton.
Hi, can you share what those agenda items are on the screen?
Okay, you know what? I will do that for you. Hold on.
Thank you.
No problem.
And also, Mrs. DeCaro, also it is available on the district website.
Yes.
Under the Board of Ed.
Yes.
The agenda is always posted there for the public.
Mm-hmm.
I had tried that, but it wasn't opening.
Okay, sure. I will share that for you. No problem. Thank you, Amelia. All right, so the action,
it would be difficult for that portion. Why don't we just go through the agenda and then open up the public for any comments on anything?
Yeah. Okay. All right, any other comment? All right, so seeing no comments on agenda items, we do have one more. M. Perez, I'm gonna let you unmute yourself.
No, I apologize. I was just jumping the gun for the other section.
Okay, all right, sorry, go ahead. Thank you. All right, so let's, seeing no other comments for agenda items, we're going to move on. I'm going to close this portion of the meeting and we're going to move on. And once again, anybody that wants to speak can speak at the end. Okay, so there's nothing going to be on policy, correct? We have curriculum and professional development. Any questions on that? No? Okay, athletics. Is there going to be anything in there that we know of, or? Okay. All right. So now we move on to finance. This is an action item. And I am going to need a motion to move finance number 1.
Ally will move.
Okay, Callie, can I have a second?
Burns will second.
Okay, Burns. Any discussion on finance number 1?
Yes, I have a question. This is on batch 1,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Batch 1, batch 2.
Yeah, we're doing them each batch at a separate time, correct? There's 2 items.
No, it's 1 item.
No, it's only 1 item. It's all one. All right. On batch 1 on page 8, I want to separate for voting purposes item 4784, the OBMUA. And I just have a question on batch 2. There are what I believe to be multiple billings there for transportation, which comes up to a total of $428,000. And I just want to verify that, as I know that happened at the end of the last school year, the state mandated us to pay for services that were not being rendered, not to reduce anybody's payments, even though they were not able to provide service for the most part. I'm not saying they didn't do some service. And Joe, can you confirm that?
Yes, I can confirm that. These are all existing contracts that require payment.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. I just want to, as I said, have a separate vote on that 1 item on the OBMUA.
Okay, so we are, I'm sorry, Mr. Mara, what are we voting on for right now? Batch 1.
Right, Mr. Weber, why don't you just abstain from that purchase order so we can keep it as part of the entire vote?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So we're just voting on resolution number 1, Mr. Carroll.
Resolution number 1. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mara.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes, with the abstention previously mentioned.
Okay, I see.
so be MUA. Okay, Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 1 passes.
Okay. And does anybody have any questions on items 2 through 8 under finance? Okay. Nothing under non-certificated personnel office. Non-certificated personnel operational. Any questions? Any discussion? Non-certificated personnel other. Any discussion? Okay. Now we're going to move to certificated personnel, and I'm going to need a motion to move item number 1.
I'll move it.
I'm sorry. Kelly, Ellis Foster, Did you move it?
I think I did. I'm not sure I'm not sure if Mrs. Burns jumped in at the same time.
Okay.
I have a question before we go forward. Certificated personnel item 1 doesn't have any, it's a format, it doesn't have any action on it, am I correct? Joe?
There is an attachment.
The attachment.
It's the D1 attachment.
Okay,
Okay.
yep.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Dunn will second.
Okay, Dunn will second. And is there any discussion on certificated personnel item number 1?
Mr. Carroll, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
The item you're showing, I know the items you're voting on are.
I am
relevant.
not keeping up with.
No, no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no. I believe the document you're showing is from 2018.
What?
I'm just looking at the date on it.
Oh my God, okay.
Those were good times, 2018.
You know what? It said, oh my goodness. I am so sorry. I told you, this is my first meeting, everyone. Why is that?
Thank you, Ms. Lucci.
There we
for pointing
go.
that- Ms. Lucci pointed that out for me, so thank you.
Okay. I don't know where that, again, it's the same with the PowerPoint presentation. I don't know where these things are coming from. I have them here, and these are the action items. Here we go.
You were
Okay,
right. You were voting on the correct items, but the public was seeing the wrong items.
I am so sorry.
So just, Mr. Carroll, move page, I would move forward to page 7 on the agenda.
Hold on. I gotta find it. Kel, do you have it? Hold on.
Yeah, actually, I do have the agenda up. So I can share if you want.
Okay.
Can you stop sharing?
Yes.
And then I should be able to, yeah, I have.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
That's all right.
Technical issues. I saved the wrong thing. I spent an hour before.
It's stressful.
I literally spent an hour before this meeting trying to get everything set up, and I saved the wrong draft agenda up here.
It's all right. There we go. Okay, can everyone see that now?
Yes, yes.
We're good? Okay.
So we had Ms. Ellis Foster and Mr. Dunn, first and seconds.
Okay, and discussion.
We're only talking about number 1, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Roll call, Mr. Mara.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Abstain.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 1 passes.
All right. You know what? I'm not going to try to figure this out. Okay. So I'm going to just use my thing here. I got to get much better on my technical savvy here. Okay. So does anybody have any questions on or discussion on items 2 through 14?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Mr. Silikowski.
I believe in the last 3 years, I was the person that read off all the retirees, and we have one coming up so far on this agenda. And I believe Mr. Weber did that for quite a few years also. Mr. Weber, are you willing to pick up my slack over here, or do you want me to continue?
Sure, but we're not gonna take a movement on that tonight. I think you want that on the full public meeting, but do you not, board members?
Yes, yes. That gets discussed during the public, the full public meeting next week. Mr. Silikowski, you're going to give up your, you're going to give it up.
Yet. We'll see. We'll see. I got a week to think about it. Okay.
All right. Okay, moving along. Now we are on supplies, equipment, and services. We have an action item under supplies, equipment, and services, action item number 1. May I have a motion, please?
Callie will move.
Okay, Callie, can I have a second?
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who was that? Was that Teresa, Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, unless something has changed, I thought the purpose of the agenda meeting, the action item was something that was of an emergent nature from personnel or just paying bills to get money back to vendors as quickly as possible. I didn't think that we would be voting on necessarily other items. So I don't know if, my opinion, we should be voting on this until the regular meeting.
Frank, the issue with this is an emergent issue. This is the vendor. This is the authorization for me to do competitive contracting because the vendor that has provided the fiber internet connection between all the buildings and central administration has lost its state contract.
Okay.
And it's possible, and it is possible that we may have to rewire the entire district. So I need to have the authorization just to do the competitive contracting.
I understand. It meets the requirement of an emergent nature. Say no more.
Okay, all right.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, Mr. Mara?
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Sulikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 1 passes.
Okay, any discussion or conversation on supplies, equipment, and services 2 through 3? Transportation, nothing there. Miscellaneous, anybody have any questions? Are all the committee attendees accurate? Everybody's checked their attendance in those meetings. Okay, and okay, and board secretary.
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Carroll,
Yes.
Didn't we have a not curriculum, community relations, right? We had one in December. That's not listed here.
We did, I believe it was December 10th.
Right. That is
December
correct.
10th.
Yeah, December 10th for the Community Relations and Engagement Committee.
Right. Okay, so we'll add that to next week's agenda. All right. And then we'll have board secretary and board business.
The January of each year is the board member recognition month. So each year we have a resolution recognizing the board.
Okay. All right.
We will have a program for that at the agenda meeting. I mean, at the board meeting.
Okay.
I will spend some time talking about that next meeting.
Will that be during the recognition part, Mr. Cittadino, or?
Yes, generally during recognition, we would recognize that it is Board of Education Month, a Board of Education Appreciation Month.
Oh, I think, you know what? I think you had gone out a little bit in the beginning when I asked about recognition. That's why I was wondering why you didn't respond to me then. Usually you respond. That's when the time that you had gone out a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so now we have the hearing of the residents on any school district item. Okay, so any district item, you may raise your hand And
Mrs.
I can,
Becerra,
yes,
Yeah, I took down the agenda if you want to put back up the instructions.
yes, I'm going to do that now. Thank you. That I have accurate, I'm pretty sure. Serious learning curve here with this technology. All right. Okay, so again, public comment on any agenda items only. If you're on the phone, you can select *9, indicate you'd like to speak. When announced, press *6 to unmute. So I will first call on M. Perez. If I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and please state your name and your comment. Just remember
Hi,
that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, hi, good afternoon. My name is Mark Perez. Just want to comment. I guess I'm limited to 5 minutes. Just in regression became a lack of structure. Regression is what we're hearing. There's a lot going on. This is, of course, we all grew up with structure. We all grew up going to school every day, and this is very new to everyone. And we just need to focus on education more than anything. Just like we follow the CDC, the DOH, the suggestions not to reopen, all the data and everything, why aren't we following their suggestions to reopen like such successful schools in the district, Catholic schools, private schools, doing the cohorts, the isolation, the contact tracing if there is a positive case, assigning areas for staff. Why don't we reach out to those specific schools in Old Bridge and see what they're doing to become successful? PPE supplies, having all day Friday to clean, stuff like that, HVAC systems, cleaning daily, constantly, just hiring the staff needed to clean. And also another suggestion would be with the staff as well. Some schools have, policies in place for their staff not to, that, if they were contracted outside of the school, that they are now responsible with their own pay time off or sick day off, that they have to, they're paying for going out of, and contracting disease on their own, personal time or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of things would change as far as the staff possibly, but again, these times are different. A lot of data, and I believe we should split the data with the elementary and the high school, split the staff, the questionnaires for the elementary and the high school, and try to focus on the kid. Everybody's in the same boat, but a different life jacket here. And we have all different age kids with different needs. So we have to take that into consideration. So yes, everyone is different. We do not have the same children. We have different households, different kids, different stages of development with these kids. And, there's a lot going on. And if we just focus on these kids that are regressing and with their IEP plans that are legal documents and focus on that, and just the data's out there. I get it, but it almost seems like we're leaning towards not opening until next year. At this pace, the data in September was very low and we didn't open till October. Now it's very high and we're going back and forth. And you're right. We want them to be in there and stay full time, but at the same time, we want, consistency. And the mental health of these children, of my child, is very unstable at this moment. And we're reaching outside, going outside and putting our funds out there. Our tax dollars are going one way, our funds are going the other way. It's like a double-edged sword here. We're paying for something that's not there, but at the same time, we have to pay because we love our children and we want to see them progress in a certain way. And again, it's very, everyone's different, and this is all new to us, and we all grew up with structure. But I just want to say that, we need that structure. We need the foundation of schools, and we need to focus on the teachers that want to be there, the kids that want to be there. And again, everyone is different, has different situation. We're talking about basketball right now, and we don't even have the kids back in the building yet. And I get it, outside practices and, certain situation, doing everything the right way. I don't know if that should be our focus. Our focus should be trying to get the needs of the kids with IEP at all levels and all middle school, high school, and elementary. And that's all I think I have to say. I appreciate everyone's time and help. And let's get back to it, please. I'm begging, I'm praying as a community, we all come together and we take the precautions. Places are open. People are going out still. There's the right way to do things, and let's get back to the right way of doing things like we did in March and April to keep those numbers low like we did in this community. And let's implement some policies for the staff in the school, and let's put our taxpayer money to get that staff to daily clean the PPEs that we need. And I know that there's a lot of obstacles to overcome, but at the same time, we could come together as a community like we did back in March and April when this was just starting, and it was very scary. I have family members who have the disease and are recovering from it I understand in all aspects, everybody's side to this. Same boat, different life jacket, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for your comment, Mr. Perez.
I just want to, Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
just comment a few things that Mr. Perez said. I think I like his analogy, same boat, different life jacket. The comparisons between districts is the same boat. We're all dealing with the same pandemic, but we have different life jackets in which we have to find fits for that can allow us to get to our means. And that includes the parochial schools as well. Parochial schools may not have the same requirements that we do under the Department of Education. I know we had to provide a restart and recovery plan that speaks to just the things that he spoke to about the HVAC requirements that we met. The schedule we put together, so cleaning was done throughout the day, between days, on off days, and on the weekends, which we increased our custodial staff to do that. And we provided disinfectant and hand sanitizer stations throughout the schools. We put our schools with one-way situations. We put plexiglass where needed. We provided PPE everywhere within the district and to all students and staff. So those things were met. The one thing that Mr. Perez talked about was making teachers use sick time. Well, that's the reality right now. FFCRA money ran out or funding ran out. So any teacher who gets sick, whether home or at school or wherever, is using their sick time now. So that's obviously a real requirement for them and a real concern for them that they would have to face if coming back and became sick because of exposure within the school. They would, through no fault of their own, even wearing PPE and so forth, they would have to use their own sick time, as anybody in the district would have to. You're right, the remote is not perfect and we all want our students back in school. We have a means to educate students outside of school, but at no time did I or anyone on my staff say that's going to be the same as being in school. You cannot, my first statement when the pandemic first hit us, in fact, I put a statement out to parents on February 1st about coronavirus, way before any districts did. And the overall statement is that there's no software, there's no program, no one's going to develop any computer program that's going to replace what a teacher does in the classroom with the students. We're trying to get there, we're almost there. And I assure you, we are not going to be out until September. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Okay, next to talk is Tim and Catherine Bach. If you can, you can unmute yourself and just state your name for us, please. Thank you.
Yep, it's Tim and Catherine Bach. So we were on last week, so I want to thank everybody on the board, Mr. Cittadino, and also want to thank all of the parents. There's hundreds that have logged in, and actually it was hard to get into this meeting so I could speak tonight because the astounding amount of parents that have joined and want to have a voice heard. So thanks everybody for joining. I was carefully removing my questions for my preparation to make sure that I just made comments tonight. So I'm just going to try and rattle through them to stay under the 5 minutes. My first note is that you're treating the district as one large school, or at least that's the perception for many parents, although there are different needs and different demographics across the district. To agree with, I believe it was Mark, I echo a lot of those same comments. And, my daughter's a kindergartner and we're seeing a regression. And she's a bright, learner. And if you contacted her preschool teachers, they wouldn't believe what's happened to her as a result of this remote learning. One specific thing is she's a McDivitt student, and there was 0 cases, and decisions being made district wide to not reopen when there was not 1 case at her school. It causes some concern for me. Another thing is there's been lots of talk about data, right? And the data as of, from November 20th to now, even though it's high, we're associating community spread with the inability to open up schools. So I think there's another argument to that the cases have been going up because they're not in a controlled school environment. So if students and staff are in full time, where you have control over the precautions that we spoke about, they'd have less time out and about to pick it up elsewhere. At this point, given everybody's different situations, students are spread all over the place. Daycare, temporary learning centers, with extended family, maybe at high risk. And people are going to the gym, retail stores. Mark mentioned basketball. I'm a sports fan, and I agree that school comes first. So basically anywhere that people want to go, they can right now. But the one place they can't is a controlled environment in school. I'm just going to keep going here. I have a couple more things. It seems that rather than properly preparing the buildings and implementing the necessary safety measures, the focus have been on how we can't get into school. The safety measures that I'm aware of are temperature screenings, mask wearing, social distancing, and no eating. But for example, other districts, even within the same community where the spread and the numbers are the same, whether it's a public or Catholic school, they've installed sneeze guards. And I'm just wondering if some of those additional measures that I haven't seen implemented would be helping them have the ability to stay open. So not having to re-enter because they haven't closed. Another point is that, we've justified, and this I would like to echo Frank Weber. You justified fully remote learning by citing the Department of Health's recommendation, but based on the regional risk matrix included in the reopening plan we received yesterday, they're only recommending fully remote for the very high risk level. Currently, we're orange or high risk, and the key word there is consider. So I would agree with Mr. Weber that consider isn't should. And I think based on that, I think it'd be really hard for anyone to think that there could be a case against this district. So, I thank everyone for their support, the board, especially during this appreciation month. But I think we need to get back to the basics and understand that we have to weigh the risks of obviously physical health, but we also have to counterweigh what this is doing to the emotional, social, and mental well-being of the students, especially those that are at risk, vulnerable, special education, and the youngest of grades. So, we'll be here, and you're gonna hear our voice, and hopefully things change. And Mr. Cittadino, you mentioned that this situation is fluid. I would just like it to also be fluid, that we're accelerating the ability to open as this holiday surge hopefully declines in the next week. Thank you.
I just want to I thank Mr. Bach and his wife, Catherine. I do know they sent me an email, and they sent me one earlier, and I know that I think they would admit there's like 20 plus questions in it. And I went back to my email and I did flag it for a phone call because, again, like I said earlier, it's a little easier for me to have conversations with people instead of going back and forth with emails, especially if there's 20 something questions. It's easier to have those conversations because you can sometimes answer 2 or 3 of the questions just having a statement. So Mr. Bach, if you could just email me back or your wife email me back, just be a phone number and tell me a time and date that's best for you. And I will give you a call within 48 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Allison. Allison, if you can unmute yourself and you can speak. Allison? Just have
Hello?
to, oh, there she goes. Okay.
Hi. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I am An advanced practice nurse, and I've been dealing with COVID from day one at a large university hospital in our state. And through talking to multiple pediatricians and infectious disease doctors, they are all saying that the students, especially in the grades K through 5, should be back in the classroom. There's very low risk of transmission. It's less than 15% in children underneath the age of 10. And actually, there are studies that are done that of 200,000 students that returned to school, the infection rate was 0.13% amongst the students, and the staff's was 0.24%. I think that we need to start looking at this based on grade. Like K through 5, the children are much less likely to transmit or get the disease than, say, a high school senior that is 17 years old and is going out with their friends and going to work and out in the community. My child is 7 years old. She is not going anywhere. She is home, there and back. Another thing, the statistics that you're looking at are not accounting for who's dying, who's getting sick, and who's being hospitalized. The medical community fully expected a significant surge 2 weeks after Christmas, which is what we are seeing. We're not seeing an increase in children coming into the hospital. We're not seeing an increase in children getting sick and dying. We're actually not seeing an increase in mortality or morbidity. We're just seeing a slight increase in the disease. Your plan is saying that if the teachers are getting vaccinated in February, are the teachers being mandated to get vaccinated? Because I know as a healthcare provider, we are not mandated to get vaccinated. It's not mandatory for me to get vaccinated. I did get vaccinated, but that is not mandatory. So if you only have 30% of teachers getting vaccinated, what protection does that actually have? It doesn't have much protection. And also the vaccine has not yet been proven to prevent transmission. It only prevents the person who received the vaccine from getting sick. So all in all, the children actually have to be fearful of the teachers transmitting the disease to them, not vice versa. Children to children, the transmission rate is just not there. And that is what the science is saying. And these are all statistics. The American Academy of Pediatrics put out a recommendation saying that children K through 5 should be in school because they're just not seeing the transmission from child to child. So I guess my concern is, why are we not going by any of the guidelines or any of the science, just looking at overall data of 77,000 people where we have multiple nursing homes, multiple long-term care centers, multiple skilled nurse facilities, and not looking at what a K through 5 middle school and high school is doing.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Do you have more? Okay, thank you for your comment.
Just to follow up with some of Allison's questions. Again, there's the two-part component of there's the safety issue and there's the requirement issue. And a lot of the data that I provide is not based upon the safety issue, it's based on the requirement issue. So if the community spread or the number of cases of transmission within a township in which we're averaging 40 to 50, there's a greater proximity that a greater portion of those will be students. In a township like Matawan, where they have 8 people, there's a smaller portion of those will be students. So we're seeing a direct connection between the increase in the number of people in the community that are testing positive and a direct correlation between our number of students that are testing positive. So as we looked at the data, we showed you that from November, when we were averaging 20, we had 22 students positive. As the number of people in the community increased their positivity, so too did the number of students increase their positivity. We're not saying that the students are then taking that the third graders, the first graders, second graders, and then transmitting it to the teachers, and the teachers are becoming sick. We're saying that we are required by the Department of Health to then quarantine students who come to school, even if they're asymptomatic and test positive. So then we have to quarantine those around them. People say, well, what's the difference between that and businesses that are open? I'm not so sure if at the local restaurant, they have to follow that requirement that their staff has to stay home for 14 days, and maybe they can open or they can find follow-up staff. We were at a position where we had nearly just for COVID alone, we had, I believe the number was 75 staff in quarantine, plus the 20 staff that was sick. And then that doesn't include the number of regular staff who was sick just with everything else that you get in the wintertime, from strep throat to the regular flu, which we don't have to track. So we had anywhere on a given day, 150 staff members absent. We could not safely keep our schools open without the right level of supervision. We do not have substitutes. We've been looking for substitutes. We hired an outside agency at the outset of the pandemic to bring us substitutes. There is no one to substitute in the schools because there's a shortage. This Department of Education just loosened the requirements for substitutes in the classroom because they recognize across the state there are no substitutes to help us to get through the pandemic. So I think people are missing the point on the data. No one is saying that there's an increased morbidity rate between in schools with students dying and teachers dying. That's not what the factors show us. The increase that I demonstrated was that there's increase in cases. The increase in cases is connected to increase in hospitalizations. That shows you not that we're concerned about our students being hospitalized, that the increase in cases are not false positives. They're not false cases because the hospitalizations are increasing as well. So then we look at that number, the increase in cases, and we look at our student and teacher information. As too did the number of cases go up in the community, so too did go up in our school community. And we showed that 22 students were positive in November. We have 59 now. That would make it almost impossible with the strict requirements that we're under to quarantine everyone to have the schools open, and it would set us up for a failure in which we wouldn't be able to keep them open for more than 2 weeks. We do not want to do that. I want to open the schools and have them open to June so the kids can have their prom and everything else that they're supposed to have and a regular graduation. But that happens when you do it responsibly and people in the community do things like wear the mask, do things like practice social distancing, do not have large gatherings in which we all get together. We all knew this was going to happen after Christmas and after New Year's. We hoped it wouldn't happen to this level. But today, Old Bridge is the out of all of Middlesex County, Old Bridge's numbers are the highest. It's not me saying it. You want to look at the facts, look at the county dashboard yourself. Old Bridge is higher than New Brunswick, Perth Amboy, Woodbridge, Edison. But we do not have the highest population. So there's something going on if we have the highest positives in the town, but not the highest population. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Okay, next to speak Zenobia Stone, if you unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cittadino, members of the board. Good evening. You know, I've been blessed with 2 sons, both of which have IEPs. My youngest is in a self-contained classroom at Shara. My oldest is at Carpenter. Let me premise this by saying that I love this district. You know, every single teacher, every single therapist, every single aide that has come into my boys' lives has left a positive mark on them. You know, both of my boys have improved immensely since coming into the district. And it's a direct result of the love and the patience and the understanding that, you know, the staff and faculty has given them. You know, with a nonverbal child, you know, you put your child in the hands of strangers every day and you pray that, you know, nobody harms him, because if something happens, he can't tell you. But we get on the bus every day, he'd be happy, he'd come home happy, and he would improve. You know, he went from being completely silent to now he's chattering away and he's making these phrases and he's putting, you know, he's communicating. This is a direct result of the love that he's been shown by, you know, all the staff and the faculty in Old Bridge. So, you know, I don't want to come in here and seem like I'm screaming and I'm yelling and I don't appreciate what this district is about, because I've been here for, you know, over a decade and I love this district. But I'm in a position now where, you know, my kids have been home for almost a year. You know, they went back in for the fall a little bit, they came out again. And when you have a child on the spectrum, you know, they thrive on consistency, they thrive on structure. And, you know, he's not getting that with remote instruction. And the credit of his amazing, amazing, amazing teachers and therapists. They've been trying to give him in-person Zoom time, but his attention span is not there to be on the computer from 9 to 2 every day. So the result is that he's just home, and we try to do activities with him here and there, but it's just not the same. I'm an attorney. My husband's a fiber optic engineer. We have demanding jobs, and while we try our best to make sure they get the schooling they need, it's a challenge. And I would do anything for my kids, and I will suffer to make sure they get their learning. And it's not a problem for me if it was just a matter of it being an inconvenience. I can tell you that. But I appreciate that there's a pandemic, and I appreciate that we have to be careful. I'm not saying we need to be reckless, but my child is at risk. It's been almost a year, and quite frankly, he's in a full-size classroom with 5 other children, and I think they can be socially distanced. And I understand what Mr. Cittadino was saying about the staffing issues and the problem with quarantining. Because obviously, like he said, if you have a certain number of staff members and X amount of them are quarantined, then you don't have the people to be in the buildings to teach the kids. And I understand that. But at the same time, as many of the other parents are saying, we should be prioritizing then the most high risk students and kind of rationing out the staff to meet those needs. And again, I don't know what the number of special education teachers you have in the district or anything like that. And I personally would feel terrible if any of the people that have done so much for my children would get sick and seriously harmed from being in contact with them. But that's why I'm doing my part in making sure that my son, A, doesn't go anywhere he doesn't need to go, and B, wears a mask if he does have to go somewhere. And he's great. He wears it, for a 7-year-old, he does it amazingly. But when I see things like basketball going on, it's frustrating to me because, yeah, they might be outside, but it's a semi-contact sport. They're rubbing up on each other. So if that's okay, why isn't that okay for my son to be in a classroom with 5 other kids? And when you have an autistic child and, you get a lot of pity, it's like, you poor thing, how do you do it? How do you deal with the burden? But he's not a burden. He's my baby. And he makes me happy every single day. And the burden, it comes from the outside, because you as a parent have this like timer in the back of your head that you have to get him to a certain developmental level before you leave this earth. So every day counts. So it's maddening. It's just maddening to know that he's been out of school for so long, because it's like, you don't want to see him regress. You want to see him move forward. And I appreciate that a lot of parents don't have, this worry, and they don't have to worry about this. But for the rest of us, it's a very real fear. I love this district. I don't understand why the bottom fell out when the pandemic hit. I don't understand why surrounding districts have, fought and bent over backwards to at least keep the special needs kids in school. But in Old Bridge, the answer is like blanket, everybody stay home. So I'm here not to point fingers and blame and shout, but just to kind of give a plea and to beg and to say, please work out a plan where, these kids get back to school. At least the special needs kids are the ones that need it the most. Please answer the prayers of so many parents that are having sleepless nights worrying what this is doing to their children, because while if the saying is correct that children are resilient and they bounce back, that's not the case for every child. And this is doing them a lot of harm. So, again, thank you for your time. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You're muted, Joe.
As I was saying, thank you, Zenobia. Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Jennifer. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Name's Jennifer Woman. I have a couple questions regarding the re-entry plan. I think that I'm a teacher in another district, and I'm also a parent of a special needs child. And I just want to know what a normal day will look like upon re-entry to this building, even if it's at 50% capacity. What is a normal day going to look like for an elementary school student? What's the classroom setup going to look like? What are they going to be allowed to do in the classroom? Also middle school. and high school. My son's biggest concern is, why should I go back to school if I have to sit in a seat all day and be on a computer? I could do that at home with you. So I think that maybe if we put out some information so the parents can become more educated as to what the new normal day will look like for their child going back to school, it could help some parents make a decision on whether or not they actually want to send their child back to school. Because with my son with his ADHD and his dyslexia, he'd rather be home if he can't have the amount of attention that he needs in a classroom. If he's not able to get up and move around, he's better off staying home. And, you know, I'm able to work with him the way that he needs to be worked with. So I think maybe we need to put out some kind of a plan that like models what a normal school day will look like for these kids. And another thing, I'd like to say thank you to all of you, because I know how hard this is, how difficult it is to be making these kinds of decisions for a district as large as Old Bridge. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone in the Grade 9 Center that has reached out to me when my son was sick with COVID. You know, we talk about, you know, how much these teachers care about their students. Well, you know, they really came through and they really showed how much they cared with offering extra help and everything else. So I just wanted to leave on that note, a positive note. But I think that maybe we need to see a model of what these new normal days will look like for our students returning to the classroom with this AABB schedule. Thank you.
Just if I want to thank her for her comments, Jennifer. The only thing I will say is, I'm sure we'll follow up on that again. When we went to phase 2 in October, we did have videos from each grade level, elementary, middle, high school, of a day in the life of a student, what it would look like, what they would expect at the 50% capacity. I believe Dr. Tui's office put out to I guess kind of breakdown of the schedule for this day and what the student's schedule looked like and what classes they'd experience. Again, when we reach that point, and like several people have asked, that's why we have it in the plan to examine and bring back our segments of our special need population first. That is our goal. And when we get to that point, I'm sure we'll modify some of the stuff we did. But if you look back, again, this is 50% capacity. If you look back at what we did in October, we sent out videos from every grade level depicting what the day in the life of a student will be and what to expect.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Okay, we have a phone number, the last 5 digits, 1562. If you unmute yourself, state who you are, please state your name. And if you unmute, you're on the phone, so you'd have to do *6. And then you can speak. There you go. Just state who you are, please.
Hi, my name is Ray Tobin. My comment has to go along the guidelines of the data that is backing the reopening plan of positive cases. If you are going to say who's positive or how many positives there are, I think you need to also state how many were also tested to get a percentage of what it really is. And with the testing that's going on in Old Bridge High School, I'm not too sure. It's just rumors floating around of our other towns being tested there also, driving our numbers up. So that's just my quick comment.
Thank you.
I can state that part of the requirements, no matter who you're tested with, is you have to have your copy of your driver's license, even if you don't have insurance. And the positive gets reported back to your county in which you live. I do not have data for Old Bridge as the number of tests and the number of positivity, just not on the county dashboard. If it was there, I would report it back to you. I will ask the county to see if they have any more information on that. But the information as to the positivity rate, which is based upon the number of tests taken and the number of people who come back positive, is in the state data.
Okay. Next commenter is on the phone with the last four digits of, oh, they went away. Never mind. Okay, next commenter is also on the phone. The last four digits of 4275. If you press *6, you can unmute yourself and please state your name. I'm sorry, 4275. *6, you can unmute. There you go. Just please state your name.
How you doing? Keith McIsaac. Just a comment on to what Mr. Bach had said earlier about what has happened in the schools with plexiglass and or additional things that need to be in these schools for the teachers to walk in, for the students to walk in, for anybody to be in that building. What has been done? I could tell you right now, I have 20 men on standby that are willing to go in there and put plexiglass up around all the teachers' desks and around the students' desks so they could go in and be safe. So my question really is, what has been done to those buildings to improve the safety of when we do go back? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just, my comment would be that, I just want to clarify this. And again, it sounds like some people, when they say it, when we go back, like it's the first time we're going back. We've gone back before, and we did so by meeting the needs of the state requirement for us to go back and meeting the state standards. We had to submit a plan, which is online in our district webpage, of our standards in which we've met. And that included cleaning stations, like I said, having the right HVAC requirements, having PPE in place, having plexiglass in place where it's necessary. It's like some of our rooms have, curtains hanging from the ceiling. Not really curtains, like plexiglass hanging from the ceiling to create safe environments. We took precautions with our devices that are there. So a whole litany of things have been done, and it wasn't the reason we closed because, again, of an outbreak of expansion because students were getting and staff were getting sick within the building. We didn't have evidence of that except for 3 situations, and one of them was a custodial infection that took place after the schools were already closed. So only in 2 situations was it school related. The problem came to be, and which is related to the data in which we've presented, is that the volume of students and staff that are positive do indicate the number of staff and students that would be quarantined, and does not align with good practices to bringing people back, because we'd have to then again close the district following the same health guidelines that we're required to, that is required of all public school districts. So that is the problem which we face, and we do this, we want to do it in the right way fashion. Again, everybody said it, we want to have our students back as soon as possible, but we do not want to create a false impression for them that they're going to come back and stay in district if we have to close again, because right now the numbers are just too high, and the quarantine requirements as required by law or guidance from the State Department of Health, which is supported by the governor's requirements, would force us to quarantine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Executive orders, word I was looking for. Sorry, had a brain freeze for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Jay, I'm glad you came back. I apologize for cutting you off last time, and I am glad you came back. If you just unmute yourself, you can speak.
Can I just say one thing before Jay goes? Hey, Jay, I'm sorry to hold you up for a second. And the last caller, if he wants to email me, reach out to me, see what kind of plexiglass you have. I mean, I'm hoping there's a day when we don't need plexiglass everywhere we go, supermarkets, restaurants, where you're all talking through plexiglass. I don't know what's going to happen with all this plexiglass in a few years, where it's all going to go. But, I will talk to anyone who wants to help. So just reach out to me. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jay, you're up.
How are you? A lot of my questions were asked previously, and some of the callers asked a lot of questions, and I guess not every question could be answered on the spot. But two subjects that I want to zone in on they're pretty plain and simple. How private schools are getting it done in the same township where the numbers are spiked and we're the biggest and we're the red zone. How private schools are getting it done is my first question. And my second question is in reference to the numbers. And again, a previous caller mentioned it. I mean, selfishly, I have two children in Carpenter, age 9 and 7, and I don't believe the data pertains to elementary school. When you refer to students, based on your slides, it looked as if the students were referring to the high school students and the high school staffing and faculty. Previous calls have mentioned, I don't think that my 9 and 7-year-old pose a threat to the school system at Carpenter. So again, if someone could address how private schools are doing it, and if the data can get a little bit more granular down to the elementary schools. Old Bridge is a big township, a lot of nursing homes, a lot of elderly. And unfortunately, people are dying and getting sick. But my selfish concerns are with the elementary school numbers and how the private schools, which are a mile away from Carpenter, are getting it done.
I will say, Jay, I do not have information on how the private schools, if they follow the same requirements that we are to, if they're required by the Department of Education to submit the same plans that we have. Mr. Parton seems to be shaking his head no, so I'll let him weigh in on that.
They're not subject to that, Mr. Cittadino. The private schools don't have the DOE road back documentation pertaining to them. They don't have the enormous policies that you were forced to adopt in August and July that governed your rules of engagement for your return. Private schools don't even have mask and social distancing requirements that are imposed upon them. They make their own decisions, some with great success, some with much less success. But the quickest answer to Mr. Slade's question is private schools are not subject to the Department of Education.
And I will say this, listen, I'm not going to point out I'm not even talking about private schools right now, just talking about private schools in general that I do know of, because we provide transportation to and from several private schools. And at times, we are not even notified of positivities in the school. So whether it's the reporting is not the same, that we find out third party that students who were riding our buses to private schools were positive, and then our outsourced buses have to be pulled offline, where we find it out much later. So I don't know. Again, my comment has nothing to do with the Old Bridge private schools. I have not looked into what they're doing. I can only back up what Mr. Parton has said, that they don't have the same requirements. As the granular information, yes, it is true. The middle school students have more positivity than the elementary school students, and the elementary school students have less positivity than the high school students, who have more than the middle school students. But again, there are smaller staffs there. So when you look at a small school such as a Grissom school or even a Cooper school, so if there's a positivity there in which it quarantines multiple people, there's less staff in that building to then serve the needs of the students that are remaining. Whereas in the high school, if you quarantine 4 teachers, you can find a handful of teachers, 1 6th period or an extra period can make up for the difference. That's part of the problems we're seeing. There, in some of the smaller elementary schools, there's just enough staff to oversee the courses and the supervision of the students. You lose 3 or 4 of those staff members without the ability to find substitutes at this day and time. You can't adequately and safely staff your buildings. And that's the problem in which we had. You have to remember, the first school that we had to close wasn't elementary school, it wasn't middle school, it wasn't high school. It met the Department of Health guidance for 2 or more cases that we had to close the school for 14 days.
keep unmuting. Thank you, Mr. Citadino. The next up is Gina. Gina, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm just going to read something that I came across, and it states that emergency health visits related to mental health increased 24% for kids ages 5 to 11 and 31% for kids ages 12 to 17. Now, I know friends of mine, kids are suffering from depression, and my own son, who's 5.5, is suffering from anxiety now. Are you going to do anything for these students that are suffering? And by the way, the Wellness Wednesday is kind of a joke. That was like, if that's the best that you could do, it's really pathetic. And what are your plans for those that are regressing? Because it can't be looked at as a whole, like everybody open or nobody at all, because high school and first grade aren't the same, and they need to be treated as such, because K through 5 in special education poses the risk and has long-term consequences, whereas high school kids, they don't. And our younger kids have different needs than the older kids do. Let us, the parents who want what's best for our kids, wanting them in school, sign a waiver to assume the risk, as well as the students, as well as the teachers, the subs, the paras, who all want to go back. I just don't understand how these nearby districts figured it out and you all couldn't. I mean, take notes from Matawan, Homedale, East Brunswick. I could go on and on. I just don't understand how we're failing and we're left in the dust. And our kids are suffering the consequences from it. Thank you.
I believe most of those issues and comparisons to other districts I addressed in the presentation. That's why the governor offered autonomy as what schools do, because you can't compare, a district that has 3 positives to a district that had 49 today. And kind of went through that in the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Citadino. Okay, next caller is with the last 4 digits of 8503. If you can just press *6 to, there you go. And just please state your name. #8503, you're unmuted. If you can just state your name. Oh, you're muted again. There you go. Okay. Looks like you're having some phone problems. I just stay right there, 8503, and I will come back to you. I'll go to the next caller and I will try to come back to you, okay? Christina Ward, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
I just think that administration really needs to make clear the vaccination levels that you're looking to achieve in terms of the staffing, faculty, and teachers. Because when we talk about safely and effectively opening, we could find ourselves back at the same point that we're at right now. And I think that a lot of the anger from the parents comes from the false hope that's given when reopening dates are continually pushed out. So, what are your desired levels that you're looking to achieve when we speak to vaccination? Because we do know that the vaccination is not 100% foolproof. So we could have cases where a child comes in to school with COVID, and that can lead to staff, even though vaccinated, may be quarantined. What is the guidance that has been brought forward from the Department of Health and the CDC when we're speaking in terms of vaccinated staff members?
Thank you,
Christina.
Christina, thank you.
So the best I can do to answer to that question is, one, the Department of Health has not provided guidance as to a modification of the quarantine when a staff member after their second vaccination in 14 days is level of protection. Now, I do know the Moderna vaccine, which was the one that we were told we would be using if everything works out with this vendor that I'm working with, has an 80% rate based after just the first vaccination. If the article I read today in the New England Health of General, the New England, I forgot what the article was, but I found it online. Anyone here can Google it as well. New England Medical Health Digest stated that the Moderna vaccine is looking at 80 to 90% effectiveness just from the initial vaccine. And there was even discussion about does everyone need a second? As far as the numbers we have and working with representatives of our staff, just anecdotally, they believe that anywhere we would be vaccinating 60 to 75% of our staff is looking to and willing to receive the vaccine. So to answer all of your questions, hopefully we'd get sent in anywhere between 60 to 75%. I'm hoping it'd be a greater amount because again, the vaccination would only be available to our staff, and our staff wouldn't have to go to make arrangements at CVS or ShopRite to get it done, or make appointments with doctors. And 2, we're looking to expedite it. And 3, we're looking for more guidance from the Department of Health as if they modify the quarantine based upon the vaccine. We don't know. Again, this is new. This is the first. They haven't even opened it up to teachers yet. So hopefully, when they do, they'll modify some of their position on quarantine.
Thanks, Mr. Citadino. Okay, we're going to come to 8503 again. I'm going to ask you to unmute *6. Let's see if we can get you. There you go. You're unmuted. Can you? We can't hear you. No, I'm sorry.
That person, just send me an email and tell me you're the one that couldn't be heard, and please give your phone number and I'll call you back tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. A503, just send Mr. Citadino an email with your question. Okay. Amelia, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, I just have a few questions based on the comments that have been made and the data that's been shared with everyone. I understand that you're showing data, but it would be beneficial to show all the data, not specific data, which only supports the decision. I think it's helpful if we understand more about the data and that which hasn't been shared. For instance, the number of students that parents have chosen to opt out, and the number of teachers approved to not teach in person because of medical concerns. As you said, being the decision is mainly based on community spread, which results in not enough staff. What is the breakdown of students in terms of grades, and how do we know if those are not those who have been opted out? Why can't the teachers approve to stay home teach the kids who have been opted out? Would that solve the concern of not enough teachers? Should students be positive and teachers having to quarantine? Has that been looked at? It seems decisions are being based on circumstantial instances, and I can understand that to a degree, being much is still unknown, but they may be the case for years to come. That may be the case for years to come. We keep hearing that you're doing what you can to bring the students back, but we have not seen or heard that. What plans have been presented and then found not viable, and why? Share that with us. Show us that you have looked at every possibility, all the data. Our kids deserve to know the district is doing everything in their power to get them back to learning in school. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia.
Just I tried to write down most of the things that Amelia said, and if I lost something, just hopefully she reaches back to me through email. So some of the data we looked at is I think she asked by grade level, and we did not break it down by grade level on our spread on our red chart, the impact chart. I would have to talk to Mr. Parton. I don't know if that would be a problem, but I'd like to talk to him offline to see, how much information we can share about students. And it becomes it's very hard working with the Department of Health, because they're very protective of student data when it comes out, and how much you're allowed to break it down by. So that's something I'd like to look at. As far as what research have we done? We're basing this upon not thoughts or exercises what we might do. It's based upon thoughts and exercises of what we did do and how did it work. We put all of the requirements in to have the schools open and open safely with all social distancing, PPE, cleaning, air quality that was required, and that wasn't the problem. Again, I reiterate, the problem was the volume of students and staff, majority of that, which was students that tested positive, that required, according to Department of Health guidelines, to quarantine the students that were in the proximity and the staff that was in proximity of the positives, whether they were symptomatic, whether they're asymptomatic. The data that you're suggesting is not relative to our problem. The problem we had is we brought students in, we brought staff in, and at the end of bringing everyone in, that we weren't able to safely staff our schools because of this perfect storm. We have a pandemic. We have a shortage of substitute teachers. And the problem was that we have to follow CDC guidelines for quarantining. That is the majority of the problem that we faced. So we're going to continue to look at ways and to improve upon that. But the best way to do that is to bring our students back when we know the numbers are going down, when we are aware that there is increased herd immunity through the vaccine, and that we do not have to send our students home again, because we'll have the staff to support this very difficult decision. To ask is it our goal to bring the students back into this district? I would think that because we did, and we brought them back in stages and phases, starting with our neediest population, that it demonstrates that we want to do that. And we continue to want to do that. So that's the goal. And we want to have our students in as soon as possible. I don't think anyone on this board, anyone in my office, any teacher would say anything different. 25 of the current 59 students that are positive are at the elementary level. So that's just information that I just received. So if you break that down, those 25 students, they come in contact with minimum of 2 teachers per school. You're looking at up to 50 staff that are now quarantined on top of any staff from middle school and high school. It becomes very, very difficult to run the district. And I'm saying it's difficult, it becomes impossible, because you have to have a certain number of staff in every school to adequately meet the needs of the students. Whether there are 3 students in the classroom or 25 students in the classroom, the Department of Health also makes you do it in cohorts, so that you don't have an increased level of spread because you're mixing cohorts. So that's another element that makes it more difficult. I came across this article too, because everybody's citing the American Academy of Pediatrics, and what they state there is that the federal assistance to all schools throughout the United States, irrespective of whether the current local context allows for in-person instruction, it makes it clear that opening schools should be dependent on the virus's presence in the community. And that's what we're basing it on, the presence within not just Old Bridge, but our school community. And that's why that data is there for you. I probably missed something that was said. Again, I would ask anyone who, if I missed their question, to please reach back to me. I'll provide your phone number and I will give you a call back.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Next up is Purvi. Purvi, if you unmute, there you go. You're unmuted, so you can speak.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Purvi Korecha. I'm just going to echo, I'm going to try to be very brief. I just have to voice it out because it's just been, so I have two kids. I'm not even going to go to my special education child, but my child, my daughter who's in the first grade in the general education, who I thought I would not have to worry about, is facing, what every parent is saying. I'm seeing her, just shut down now, and she has migraine issues. All of a sudden she's getting these insane headaches, which now the pediatrician is like, she needs to limit screen time, and I'm like, how do you expect me to do that? So I'm just going to voice. I'm not going to get into all the other details, but this seems the same stuff keeps getting repeated over and over with, just the data and this, but, it seems very biased, this decision that's been made because, we parents are forced, the kids obviously have a choice, they have to make this decision. As parents have to make a decision that, yes, I'm putting my child at risk, but there is consequences if I'm not sending my child in person. So we are forced, and none of us are bad parents. I mean, this is the community, the way this was presented that, oh my God, people are dying. We are not choosing for this for our kids. We are not risking this for our kids out of choice. It's because we are seeing what's the alternative, what's happening to our children. And that's forcing us to put our children into this position wherein, we weigh out the cons and pros. And all we are asking is that, take the necessary precautions that need to be taken. And, this is a long-term thing. I mean, with the vaccine, we don't still know how long we're counting positives. I mean, we're counting, not even deaths, we're counting positives. So how long is this thing going to go on for? It's obviously going to be probably I would say a few more years before we start to see, I mean, the flu vaccine has been there forever, but we still have people dying of flu, and we still have people getting sick. We never count the number of people who get sick with flu. So I'm not going to compare. This is a totally different situation, but I see this thing, this has impacted the whole world to be there for a long time now. So what is it that we keep talking about this plan, but and going back to this thing about this seems to be biased. I mean, it seems like the focal point of this, and I love our teachers, and it's not fair for us to kind of, even, talk about this, but we don't want to jeopardize the teachers or the kids. Put the necessary things in place. And it seems like a very biased decision just for one, just for the teachers, because, you do care for the students, but obviously not more than the parents. And if the community is begging and pleading that, that we are seeing.
Harvey, can I just interrupt you for 1 second and you'll get your time back? I just can't reiterate this enough. It doesn't matter if we have spacesuits on the teachers and bubbles. If they're in a room with a student who tested positive, the Department of Health requires us as a public school to put them on quarantine. We're talking about the numbers of quarantine, not talking about whether teachers are safe in the classroom or they don't have the right PPE. You can have all the PPE in the world. We have our teachers in some of our classes with gloves, face shields, masks, and gowns. And it's not like a hospital where if a nurse or a doctor comes in contact with someone who is COVID positive, they don't get, I understand, they're not required to quarantine. I get it. But in the schools, if you're in a gown, if you're in a mask, if you're not and you're not a medical provider, you're a teacher, you have to be quarantined. That's not an Old Bridge decision. That's not a David Cittadino decision. That's not a Board of Education decision. That's a Department of Health decision. And that only got worse when we became an orange zone. So when we could have quarantined people for 10 days, now we have to quarantine them for 14 days. That's 2 full weeks out of school for multiple teachers. That's the problem. We're not saying we're here only to protect them and we want to make sure we have the best protection of layers for them. It doesn't matter if we give them all the protection in the world. We still have to pay attention to the quarantine guidelines. Maybe that's a difference in the private schools. Maybe they don't have to do that. I don't know. That's what we're required to do.
So obviously this is not spreading from the school district, right? Like the amount of, that you're seeing the protection that's there, it's obviously not spreading from the, so if everybody, I mean, it goes back to what the other person was saying in terms of not everybody's in school, because I'll tell you I'm forced with the decision of like with my kids, and this is not a 1 month thing, right? It's been going on since March now. So how long do we contain our kids in the home, right? I mean, so if it's a 40 degrees, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about my child is, she's going to do a depression. So let me take her out for a walk. So now I'm risking my kids, and taking them out in the, in the park or just for a walk. Instead, if the child was, every kid was in school, then they would not be having all these, we wouldn't be making all these. So obviously this is, the school obviously is taking the care and, they're cleaning everything and they're doing, but we are forced to, and I think that's probably part of the problem, that people are having to, for their own sanity and the kids' sanity, they are forced to kind of now take them to places wherein it's not as sanitized. And when we have the public school districts and the funding to kind of keep a sanitary, to keep the mental, emotional, and get the education needs, I think it's like a domino effect at this point. So I'm going to stop there because I know it's going to go back to the whole numbers, but something needs to be planned out, because again, this is not a 1 month, 2 month thing. I don't see this getting any different in the near future. I mean, at least a good 1 year. So are we going to be this way? I mean, we have to kind of have something else to be, some other plan. And we can't just keep doing this every 2 months, revisiting this every 2 months. It's impacting everybody. And this is your community. I mean, I understand, appreciate everything that everybody's putting this through. But my only this thing would be that this is a long-term thing. And just share some plans, and the numbers are, they are there, but at the same time, we have to figure out that how do we move on from this, right? That's it. I'll stop there. So, well, thank you for hearing me out. I know it's late, so I appreciate everyone spending the time to hear me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Purvi.
My only last comment based upon Purvi's, is that, like we said in the beginning, and I speak to a respiratory illness professional once a week, and he told me in October that this was going to be bad in November, it was going to be worse in December, and bad in January. He said in February, you're going to start to see the regression of it because the respiratory illness season changes. We're hoping that in connection with the number of people that will get the vaccine, that it's going to change. Obviously, last spring, we got hit with COVID after respiratory illness season. Now we have COVID during a respiratory illness season. So it only makes sense that this is much worse than it was in the spring. But like everything else, all respiratory illnesses, such as the flu, such as COVID, and all its many strains and forms, starts to dissipate as you come closer to warmer weather, which will be great too, because when we have our staff and our students back in the building, we can open our windows again and not rely upon circulated hot air. We'll bring in more fresh air into the classrooms, and we'll make it a that much even safer environment.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. 8503, are we going to give this another go? *6 and unmute yourself. Let's try this again.
Hello.
I hear you. Yes, there you are.
Oh, you can hear me. Great.
Yay.
Hi. How you doing? My name is Leonardo. My name is Leonardo Marquetta.
Okay.
How are you?
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I just have a few concerns regarding this entire thing. The first one is the Board of Ed, if they're making any money from the administering the test at the high school. We understand that in the beginning of the coronavirus, states were given a certain amount of money to treat and test for coronavirus. So what
can I just say we're not making any money. We're costing us money because we are providing security.
Yes, but you're also being reimbursed for how many tests you administer throughout using the high school grounds.
I'm not being.
That's number one. It says so. It says so.
I'm telling you right now.
It says so in the articles that I've read. Just like you've read articles, I've read articles as well. And in the articles that I've read, It said that the states are being reimbursed per the government in like an $8 billion thing from the CARES Act. So
Sir?
don't tell me that you're not being
Sir?
reimbursed, because you are being
Sir,
reimbursed.
the
Number
township-
two is
the-
what has
so
your
you just wanna ask
administration done in
questions.
1
You
year?
just wanna ask
I
questions, but you don't want
want an
answers.
answer from you, because you don't have a plan. Your
I'm trying
your
to answer your
administration
question.
is totally
Okay,
inept
okay,
to what you're
let's-
doing in this town. You are
All right,
causing people
Mr.
lives.
Mr.
You are
Margetta,
causing people.
calm
causing
down.
people. You are causing people
down.
the loss of an education to a proper education, which there's a constitutional right to have. And you are costing people that. You have children at home that are special needs. What are you doing with these kids? You're ruining them. You're ruining them socially, and you're ruining them educationally. You're not allowing them to get a proper education. You have put 0 plexiglass in any school. I know this to be fact. Okay? You have put 0 plexiglass. You have put 0. You have put nothing to protect the teachers. What have you done with all that funding money that you've got from the states?
Mr. Marchetta, we're going to let you have all your comments, and then Mr. Cittadino can address them when you're through. Okay, so if you're through, let us know. Otherwise,
No, I am not through.
okay.
I actually have more.
Okay.
What about the district employees that have their children attending other schools in other townships? That's a fact. There are 2 district employees that live in Manalapan, and their children attend in-person school. Have the teachers been asked if they want to resume in-person teaching? And again, what provisions are you putting in place to protect them? Hello?
No, we're going to let you put all your questions out, and when you're done speaking, Mr. Cittadino will address your questions. Okay, we're not going to do a back and forth.
How come there are district employees advocating for our schools to say shut down while they send their kids to in-person school in the district in which they reside? Another question.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Are you sure? I don't want to stop you. You took a breath. I wasn't sure if you were done.
No, that's it. We're good.
Can I just, before you go, tell me what
Okay.
your second question was again?
One more.
Because-
Why haven't you guys gone above and beyond of what the restart and repair program was? Why haven't you guys done that? I mean, it's looking to us as the citizens of this very fine town with a very fine educational system in place with very fine teachers, that your administration is not doing anything to try to get these kids back in school. And that's the most frustrating part. You're not doing anything to try to get them back in school. And the second part of my question, Mr. Cittadino, was why is Old Bridge the only district? No, I don't remember the second part of my question. My brain was going 1,000 miles an hour.
I think you mentioned something about other districts being present, and how come we're not? Is that it?
How come there are district employees advocating for our schools to stay shut down while they send their kids to in-school person in the district in which they reside? Because we do know that there are employees in the district that live in Manalapan and other towns, and those townships are open for school, but we are not. East Brunswick, to be specifically, sent out something today regarding that. They've had positive COVID tests.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they continue to keep their children in school. Why can't we do the same thing?
Okay.
Okay.
Was that all your questions, Mr. Marchetta? I don't want to cut you off. I want to make sure that you get everything out that you wanted to say. I don't know if you're just taking a breath.
No, I think that's it. I'm sorry for losing my cool. I didn't mean to do that. It was just at the heat of the moment. I'm trying to get my point across, and that was that.
Okay. We're good?
We're good. Yeah. I mean, just try to figure something out. I mean, these kids are suffering.
Okay.
The kids are suffering, and the parents are suffering as well. I'm home with these kids all day. I got 3 kids. Okay. One of them in kindergarten, one of them in 4th grade, and one of them in Salk in 6th grade. My oldest one, who's 12, going to be 13 this year, has anxiety. And my other 2 children right now are beginning to suffer from anxiety as well from being home from this. It's not a joke what these kids deal with at school. They have these active school shooter drills right? When I was growing up, we didn't have active school shooter drills. Now, all of a sudden, now you're going to throw this on top of them where you're going to tell them that people are dying. Meanwhile, there's a 99.1 recovery rate from this. People that I know had the virus. Some of the most unhealthy people that I know had the virus, and they're fine. If we're going to wait to have 0 cases of this, you're going to wait the rest of your life, because this is not going anywhere like the previous caller stated. This is going to be the new flu. You're going to have to get a vaccine every season for this. Enough's enough. Let's get these kids in school. Do something. Have a plan, Cittadino. That's all we want. We want a plan. Give us a plan. Put us something in place for the citizens that elected you into office.
I wasn't elected.
Put something in place. Whatever you are, man. I don't know what you are, bro. Okay, however you got in there, put something in place. Do your job. Do what people are paying you for. Whatever you're being paid through this township, just do it. You have nothing. You've shown ineptness. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but these are facts. I apologize. Have a great night.
Okay. Mr. Cittadino, would you like to respond?
Yes. If, like I said before, the testing in which we have at the Old Bridge High School is in a shared service agreement with the township. I do not know. I know they had to front the money for the trailer that's there for it. Again, I'm not involved with the township's finances as to what that cost and how's it going through the CARES funds. I know they have a great team there with the mayor and Hamachu, and I'm sure they can answer that question for you. But as far as the district, all I have done was say, you want to have testing here? Let's do it. You can use Old Bridge High School. I will promote it. I will get my staff there to help out with security. As far, I'm paying my staff, my security staff anyway, as I'm required to, as contracted employees. All I've done is modify their hours so they're there for the COVID testing. They're not being reimbursed for that. We're not being reimbursed for that. So as far as I know, the school district is not getting any money back in CARES for each case of people being tested. I want anyone who wants to get tested, but the school district has no skin in the game for the finances for the number of people being tested. Nowhere even near it. And I'm sorry that you're so strongly you feel that we are, but we're not. I've addressed these questions like, why is East Brunswick able to do it? Why is Manalapan able to do it? 2,000 total cases in East Brunswick. They don't have half our population, but they have more than less than half of the number of cases. Now, you said, well, East Brunswick's been educating their kids all along. In fact, East Brunswick closed for this respiratory illness section of COVID earlier than we did. They started sooner, but they closed sooner. And they've been closed ever since early November for all forms of education. They're not in person. Their secondary level groups of students are not scheduled to go in person until February. With the data they put out today, I would not be surprised if they pushed back even further their elementary start date, because they're faced the same situations with quarantining as we would. So it's wrong. They have not been in education place this whole time. And like I said before, or someone pointed out to me, we're all in the same storm, but we all have different boats. Some people have canoes, some people have kayaks, some people have yachts. We're dealing with the best boat that we have based upon the storm that we're receiving. And I tell you what, some people in a much deeper storm, there's districts all around us that have never opened for one day of school, not one. They didn't even try it, but they've had higher numbers than us. But right now, today, we have higher numbers than them. So our plan, to say that we don't have a plan, I have presented no plan, go on any district webpage and find a plan, find a page that has more information than ours does. I'll wait for you to get back to me on it. I've seen the other district's plan. Today's plan with data, state points, schedules is very in-depth. I'm sure someone has a better one, but to say that we haven't presented anything, I've done nothing to go up above and beyond. Well, just having testing and vaccination in schools. I don't know any other school district that has had testing available for our staff as soon as they did, and have a testing and partnered with testing as we've had to make it so readily available. as far as programs. Like people say, well, I'm hearing about, well, the social emotional of teachers, and they're on too much screen time, social emotional students, and there's too much screen time. So we have these meetings with parents, we have public relations committee meetings, we have the task force meetings, we sit with students, we talk to them, and we hear what they want to say. It may be not what you want to say, it may not be what you want to hear, but it was their recommendation come with something like Wellness Wednesdays. And because you don't like it, you come here and tell us it's a joke, it's stupid, it hasn't even started yet. But what else are you going to do different? You know, there is no perfect plan for pandemic that is the first one to have in 100 years. But I think this district and our staff and our teachers and our educators and our leaders have gone above and beyond with the support of this board in many areas. No one's saying we're waiting to have 0 cases, but we're also not saying to rush back into schools during the height of a pandemic, during what every medical person knows, and we even have people here tell you that they knew was going to happen during the height of the respiratory illness season. We don't provide numbers of deaths in the community to scare anyone. It's all on the county website. You want to see it? It's there. All I do is copy and paste it to you. I do know that I know at least 5 families in this district that lost a parent to COVID. Is 5 an acceptable number for this community? I hope not. I hope not 1 is acceptable. I don't know if you know, if someone wants to show me that in any time in modern history that 115 people in this community died from the flu in less than a year. I keep on hearing the last person compared to the flu. It's not the flu. So we can, you know, make comparisons all day long. I said, you know, you can't compare one district to the other because you have to look at what I read before was the American Pediatric Association. It's got to be related to what's going on in your community. That's what we're doing. We're bringing our students back. We will have them back very soon, but we will bring them back when it's safe. Not only for them to, you know, looking at whether they'll have community spread, but they'll have teachers available in the classrooms to monitor them and provide them the education they need because they're not out on quarantine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. We have one more caller, 1233. If you can unmute yourself. 1233.
Oh, hi. Hi, this is Amber Miller. How are you tonight?
Hi, Amber. How are you?
Good, good. Let me just take you off speakerphone. I'm actually on my way to work
Oh,
for the night.
oh, fun times for you.
Working at a rehab center in Old Bridge on the COVID unit, funny enough. Yeah, so I have my notes in my car on my lap. I'm going to try to look down and not get in an accident. I'm reading
Oh my
them. I'm so
goodness,
sorry.
pull over.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. So basically, oh gosh, where do I start? Couple quick things. I'm kind of just going to make a couple comments, maybe a couple questions about the surveys that are going out, I guess, in the future, because I'm sure there will be surveys going out in the future. I was wondering if possibly we could maybe do school-based surveys, because I know a lot of families are concerned about reopening, especially for the little ones. And I know that McDivitt parent had mentioned there weren't any COVID cases in McDivitt. So moving forward, would the administration be willing to open schools one at a time based on rate per school? That's one question. And secondly is, obviously everybody's been saying, you know, the special needs children with IEPs, you know, are regressing significantly. You know, I have 4 children, 3 with IEPs, had an IEP meeting today. And I can definitely say that, you know, since March, I, on my own with my family, have doubled my children's speech therapy. We've tripled their occupational therapy. We've doubled the amount of behavioral ABA therapy for my boys. And to date, per month, I just wanted to give you a number. My family spends $2,240 a month in copays. And that's been since March. And that's more than our mortgage payments. And the amount of regression in the children starting in September was significant. I wanted to share some positive news because everybody wants to hear some positive. My oldest has autism, and we had to change his placement, sadly, to a more restrictive environment. He went from an ICR setting at Voorhees to an LLD setting, and going from a least restrictive environment to more restrictive environment is nothing that I wanted for him. That's not what I've ever fought for. That's not what I wanted. But because of his anxiety, his ability to maneuver the computer, the academic level, it was just too hard for him. So doing so, he is now successful and 100% independent in his homeschooling with, some minor help. So that is the success story. But in advocating for him, I had to place him in a more restrictive environment because the remote learning is just not for my oldest. It's just not for my son. Talking really quickly about my youngest, who had an IEP meeting with today. We've had to hire and put his personal ABA therapist in the home setting to help with remote learning since November. We have 12 people on our team and nothing has worked. Any suggestions? We've had behaviorists in district. We have our personal behaviorists all working together, simultaneously sharing notes, each one observing, doing data. Nothing is working. I sent videos to Mr. Cittadino administration and to Dr. Tui. And I just wanted to say that everything has failed him, and to do so like I did for my oldest, wanting to advocate for him and do what I can, I wanted to place him in a more restrictive environment, but that would be the ABA class, and there's no difference in remote. So that forces me to make a really tough decision on how I'm going to move forward with my family and advocating for my son, because sitting in front of the screen and stimming in front of his fingers, Dr. Lombardi was on our IP meeting today, and I cried the entire time. And I'm going to have to make some tough decisions about moving forward, but it's just really, really sad. And I understand that the district's doing what they can, but my baby's suffering, and all the money that my family has spent over the years and all the success he's made with his teacher the last year has absolutely gone. It's just some children cannot learn this way. And when you do open up, if you do get COVID cases, I just ask that the district, instead of shutting it all down, could maybe possibly close school by school. If Mr. Cittadino sees numbers going up at the high school, maybe they have a sibling in elementary school, you only close those schools instead of district-wide. I feel like a lot of the families are echoing that the district is working as a whole, and our children are so individualized. And a high school honor student doing a remote school is completely different than a 7-year-old autistic child who just cannot focus and stare at the screen. It's significant, it's life-changing, and I really hope that we can come back from it. Really quickly, I wanted to talk a couple of quick things about ESY and summer camp. I want to think positive. I really want the district to think for the future. I know we're stuck on like the present right now, and it's day-to-day, week-to-week, but let's think about ESY. Let's think about moving ESY outdoors. We eat outdoors, we play outdoors, we practice sports outdoors. Let's make a plan now for the future, for ESY. Let's make ESY 100% outdoors. Let's make it successful, because if we can eat outdoors and play sports outdoors and practice football outdoors, we can learn outdoors. If you research the Spanish flu, it was done during the pandemic back then, the tuberculosis epidemic. The schools would, I did a lot of reading on it recently, and if the schools would actually, they didn't have a lot of air, obviously air conditioning, they would open the windows and use that as ventilation for the schools. Come the spring, if February's date does not happen for reopening, late March, why not consider outdoor school? Purchase some tents, purchase some fencing, you have security. It's a crazy thought, but it's my only suggestion, thinking outside of the box. Use the lunchroom tables as desks. Kids bring their laptops, run extension cords, you have the tech team come up with a plan. It's the only thing I can think of. Bring the children back that really, did I give you money? Did I give you money? I did. Oh. Thank you. Bring the priority children back. Outdoor schooling come the end of March, maybe April, May, June. That's my only suggestion, trying to think outside of the box, because if February doesn't happen, we have to come up with something. So I think that was all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Well, I can say, Mrs. Miller, thank you for your input. I know that Mr. Dino answered all the questions tonight, but if I could jump in, we are actively planning for extended school year. We're planning for an in-person extended school year and other alternatives if necessary. We are continuing to look at all of the ways that we can provide services. Obviously, kudos to you for all the services that you're providing in your home and the continued work that you do with all your children. We are continuing to focus and plan for not only the upcoming months for when we are hopefully back in person, but also for the summer, and then what the school year is going to look like for the students and how we're going to address some of the ways to determine how students have either made progress or have not made progress during this extended period of time. So thank you for your input. We appreciate it, and obviously look forward to discussing this with you further as we move through the year.
Thank you, Dr. Tui. We have one, let's see, 5505. If you *6, you can speak. There
Hello.
you go. Hi, just state your name, please.
My name is Brian. I think I broke the rules before.
Oh,
So
Brian,
I
was that you?
apologize.
I'm sorry. I thought it was Jay.
The first thing I wanted to tell you is that your web ID on the first screen is wrong. So I think a lot of people have been having trouble calling in. Mr. Leonardo was very passionate earlier, and I seem to share his passion. I hope it did not go down that road, but I think you guys have definitely sensed the frustration of this community. And I don't believe any of us thought that you guys would have the power that you do now over our lives and our children. So you are in a position right now for the ultimate public service, You have to weigh the cost, a very real cost of our children not learning, of our children falling behind, of our children not getting the social contact they need to be effective adults. So I think everybody's frustration is just that we got beat over the head with COVID numbers time and time again, but we did not see any other side of the argument. We did not see the depression, the anxiety, the children who can't read and they're almost 7 years old, the children who are struggling to count by tens. Now, all these parents have vocalized all their frustration, and they're telling you that there's a very real cost to your decisions. So all we're asking is that you weigh both sides of the argument and have a general understanding that this has a cost, very long term and very substantially. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I am not seeing any other hands raised. So at this time, I am going to close the hearing of the residents portion. And we're going to continue our meeting. I'm going to stop sharing, and I will also address the phone number and the web ID, and I'll make sure that everything is correct for the next meeting. And I'll make sure I have the proper agenda up for the next meeting.
Mr.
Again,
Carroll, just before,
Yes.
I remembered what Mr. Marr had said, so I just want to, while no one else coming on, just address it real fast. The question was, The statement was that there is no plexiglass in the district. I know for a fact there's no plexiglass in the district. That is 100% not correct. There's plexiglass wherever it was requested, wherever it was needed. In fact, our own technicians within our district placed hundreds of work orders to put plexiglass in place. And they, like I said before, it's hanging from ceilings. They modified their own plexiglass with chains and stuff to put it in music rooms, places where someone has to sing and be vocal. So that is incorrect. And I think plexiglass is actually in the videos in which we showed a day in the life of the students coming back. What they could expect was having to use plexiglass to communicate with a teacher or a secretary or someone. So just wanted to reiterate that information.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Okay, so we are going to continue on with the meeting. And well, there's really, I don't know if we need to put the agenda back up because really it's just old business or new business. So we're going to start with old business. Does anybody have any old business?
Mrs. Takara, I just wanted to ask, do we think that Mr. Weber is in the attendees? Because if he is, if he can just raise his hand, that is him, and we can make sure we pull him back into the panelists.
Yeah, Mr. Weber, I don't know, maybe you got bumped out. So if you just raise your hand, I see you in the attendees. If you can just raise your hand, I can get you back in. I'm assuming that's him. You know what? Let me see.
We can figure it out. Let's just wrap it up.
All right. You tired? Okay. Any new business?
There he goes. He's back. See?
I got Mr. Weber back in. Any new business, old business? I saw none. Any new business?
I just need to share from the positivity team. We discussed we were going to share this during new business, but we'll hopefully end somewhat on a positive note. Some of the things that are going on in the district, we did implement, or I should say launch, 2 health initiatives, Minute to Win It Challenge and the 30 for 30 exercise challenge that were offered to students and staff. We have Flipgrid. Elementary students are posting their Minute to Win It's in Flipgrid, and at the request of our high school students who sit on the team, we launched a TikTok option for them, for the high school and secondary students to post their Minute to Win It videos, and the same with the 30 for 30 challenge. We also had our first yoga session, which was offered by a staff member, and it was offered to parents and students and staff, which took place last night. And the next session is tomorrow at 6 a.m. The link is on the website. We have our next superintendent's lunch bunch with our elementary students on January 27th. We implemented and set up peer-to-peer supports at our middle schools and high school. And tomorrow we are launching a Pen Pal initiative where we will have classes across the district that will establish Pen Pal relationships and communicate with one another. And I had said previously, but I will repeat that we have webinars that we are scheduling within the next couple of weeks, provided by our counselors, that will touch on the topics of student anxiety, motivation, social media, and in February, college planning. And then again, the YMCA will be providing additional health supports when those webinar dates will be announced within the next week or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoker. Okay, so any other new business? Mr. Giordano, you have new business.
Yes, sorry, really quickly. I would like to say personally, I appreciate the parents coming out and speaking up their minds against all that's going on. And I hope that we could work something out where we could get the families that not only want, but need their kids to get back into in-person learning and still follow the edict of the governor and the Department of Health. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, so I think at this point, I just want to say, you know, again, I really appreciate all of the callers that called in. I know there was a lot of passion there, and, you know, a lot of people had concerns. I truly hope that all of your concerns and questions were answered by Mr. Cittadino, and I think I can speak for him when I say, if you still have more questions, please feel free to email him. Is that okay for me to say, Mr. Cittadino?
Definitely.
Okay, good. And that's it. Again, thank you all for calling. And I am going to ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Madam President.
Mr. Dunn, can I have a second?
Burns will second.
Mrs. Burns, all in, I guess we're not going to discuss that.
I third it.
All in
You
favor?
third it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good night.
Abstentions?
All
Good night,
right.
everyone.
Good night,
night.
everyone. Thank you
everyone.
again.
Thank you.
Tuesday, yep.
Great job,
Thank
Mrs. Sedino.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Good
Al.
night.
Night.